solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and we are webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. Welcome, welcome, welcome. First thing I want to say is that yesterday somebody sent a message and I don't know at what point it came in but didn't see it until this morning, and I want to let you know if you're watching right now, we are going to address this question in the 11 o'clock hour when we have Angela Persicke in, and I'll talk about the question right now, but when Angela comes in, I'm going to ask her to weigh in on this. Angela is a BCBA board-certified behavior analyst. The question was, hi Shannon, just happened upon your site this week and truly feel as though I found the puzzle piece that I've been missing for myself. Hooray! I'm so happy to hear that. Thank you so much of giving of yourself and providing not only necessary facts and valuable lessons to help parents and children, but through the warmth of your smile, tears, and knowing empathy, total support is given. I hope so, because man, I know a little bit about what you're going through, having been a parent on this journey for a while. I never want to say I know, because it's different for all of us, right? Absolutely different. But I do have empathy for the kinds of things that you're going through, because I went through my own thing. But I love this. I've already learned so much from you and your guests. My question is about my 10-year-old son who can't give up baby Einstein. How much longer can I take him wanting to draw the characters? I've used it as a deprivation tool, but at this point with him going into 3rd grade, I'm pulling my hair out, not knowing how to get him out of this phase. Help me please. This has gone on too long. Thank you. And you know, I want to tell you that, again, we're going to answer this with Angela Persicke in the 11 o'clock hour. She is BCBA, and we'll be posing this question to her. But I want you to know how common this issue is, that children have something that they find really reinforcing, that is very exciting to them at some point, and they find it very reinforcing, and there comes a time when it's no longer age appropriate, and it can be a really difficult thing to weed out. You are not alone. You are not the only person who has had this. You know, we have people write in and say, Thomas the Tank, you know, and my child is 11, and what am I going to do because he's really into Thomas the Tank, or, you know, the obsession with Buzz Lightyear. Different kids have different things, but that they get obsessed. I have a friend who has a child on the spectrum, and the Disney sing-along videos, you know, it's the be-all, end-all. And they literally had the videos, and then they didn't come out on DVDs, and they were wearing out on her. And she said, I don't, you know, he's 14. What am I going to do about it? But there are things, I just want to tell you, message of hope, there are things that you can do to wean them off of that. It's difficult because they find it reinforcing, right? And you feel like it's like taking away the pacifier, you know? But we'll talk to Angela about that, get some great ideas about how you can do that. So stick with us for that at 11 o'clock. Just wanted to bring that up. Now, since we're talking about this, and that somebody wrote in with a question, we had a lot of great questions yesterday. I just have to say I loved that. I love it whenever you guys interact, because that's why we're here. And we are going to be here live for the next 3 hours talking about topics on the autism spectrum, how we can be more effective, how we can be more efficient, and be a rock star on our kids' team, right? There's nothing worse than with all the other things that we got to deal with in life, whether you're a parent, a teacher, practitioner, you have other things going on. And as a parent, I can speak to this, when you get the diagnosis, sometimes it's so overwhelming, all the things that you need to figure out, know, and do, and it feels a little bit like you're being flung down a wind tunnel and you got nothing to hold on to, right? And I want to tell you that there are footholds. There are places where you can grab a hold and begin to get educated on a pace that works for you. And we're here to help you to get that education, answer the questions you want, because sometimes, you just can't start at the beginning and work your way through progression-wise, because your kid is on page 67, and you need to know what to do now on page 67. It's great to go back to page 1 and read through, but when your kid's having a tantrum, you need some help and support in this very moment, right? So we're here to answer your questions and help support you along the way, and to tell you that you can do this. And I know that you can, because I was really very sure that I was not going to be able to do this, and I survived. I'm here, I'm living, I'm breathing, thank heavens, and I want to be able to live and breathe here a long time. It was hard, though. Please do not think for a second that I'm telling you, welcome to the hearts and flowers and roses of autism. No. Welcome to the hard work and I don't want to say perseverating, perseverance, that's the word I want. The perseverance and showing up for your kid and feeling how incredible that is when your child starts to make progress, and how your life changes, and how gratifying and wonderful. But you're going to sweat. You're going to sweat, and you're going to expand your brain, and you're going to learn a whole new set of terms and get a whole new set of tools. We talk a lot about ABA here, Applied Behavior Analysis, because ABA is the only scientifically proven effective treatment for autism. Now, we could go into big, lengthy discussions about why is it the only scientifically proven effective treatment for autism? Is it the only thing out there? There are other treatments, right, that might work for this child on this spectrum, and then it doesn't work for this child, and it works for this child, doesn't work for that child. And we've talked before on the show about how important it is that in the future that we work on phenotyping autism, because we do understand at this point that there is not just one cookie cutter, look, there's autism. It's really autisms, right? And our kids are different. So what's incredible about that, though, is that ABA is not a cookie cutter approach, but it can be molded and has been scientifically shown to be effective when used in that way for all of our kids. So it's not that kind of thing where you feel like, this hit and miss, I might be wasting my time here. This might be effective for my child, it might not. No. ABA, effective at creating progress for all of our kids. Are they going to progress at a different level? Yes. And lots of research is being done to make it more, to know what to do. So for the kids who have the slower progress, that can be sped up. But I want you to know there's still progress. I really get quite emotional whenever somebody says, well, but ABA, it's time consuming, and, to put these kids through this and put the families through it and the cost of it and 40 hours a week, and, and some of these kids, they do a great job, but some of them, all they get from it is, potty training. I'm so offended when people say that, because if you're a family that your child is still in diapers at age 8 or 10 or 14 or 22, potty training is huge, huge. That is substantive progress. And for anybody to make light of that or say it's not worth it because it's time consuming and expensive doesn't understand what it's like to have an adult child in diapers. I'm just saying. So I like to remind all of you that wherever your child or student is on the spectrum, and whatever age they are, there is no age limit on this. I know we talk about the window and early intervention. Early means now. Let's just get that clear. I know we all wish we could have started and fill in the blank, right? 6 months ago, 6 years ago, right? It doesn't matter. All that's past. If we haven't started ABA yet, now is the moment to start it. And we talk about the tools here. We talk about the jargon here to get you up to speed on those things. We talk about the emotional process. We talk about figuring out the funding. Because if you don't have the funding, you know, I know, and over the years, because I also host a radio show, and I remember when I started the radio show, one of the first phone calls we got on the radio show, we were on the radio talking about ABA and how important and how effective, and this wonderful woman that I'm now really good friends with called into the radio show. It was like the first show, the first phone call, and she said, you know what, I hate stuff like this. You're talking about how effective ABA is when you know perfectly well that we can't all have it. And you might as well just be dangling a steak to those of us who just don't have the opportunity. And like I said, I'm really good friends with her now, and you know, she's somebody who turned that thought around and is a mover and a shaker and makes things happen in her community and has made it possible for more children to get access to ABA. She's a powerhouse woman. But, you know, we've all felt that at some point, that unevenness of the fact that ABA is difficult to get in some places, if not impossible in some places, and that the funding is an issue. But I'm excited to be here because if we get educated, and there are tools that we can tell you about here so that you can educate yourself, it is going to mean, and it actually really does mean right now, that everybody within the sound of my voice can ensure that their child has access to ABA on some level. Yeah, we got to work to the point where everybody has access to it at its highest level, but we are so much further than we were a couple of years ago, and I'm excited and relieved that I can be here and be a conduit for you to get hooked up with the information you need to make this a reality where you live, wherever that is in the world, because we have to be working towards that. I'm 100% sure of that. You know, that thing where they ask, you know, what do you know for sure? I know for sure that all of our kids deserve to have access to this, and we have to talk about the dollar amounts. We have to, because it's what gets it done, but it ticks me off because they are all worth it. Every single one of them is worth it. And the fact that we could decide that, well, because a child lives in this state, they get access to it, and they live in this state and they don't get access to it, just cheeses me off. But ask me how I really feel. In the meantime, though, I don't want for that child who doesn't have the insurance reform in their state or in their country to lose out. And that's where you and I can be here, ask questions of the experts, and get you access to the information so they don't lose out. And that's a powerful thing. In any case, I bring all this up because we want you to be a part of the conversation. We want you to write in with your questions. We want you to tell us what's preventing you from ABA, or the difficulty that you're having, the challenging behavior that's preventing you from being able to do the things that you want to do with your child. So how do you do that? There's lots of different ways. If you're watching us on autism-live.com right now, you will see that at the top of the screen, it either says rebroadcast or it says Shannon is answering ... right? And below that, if it says Shannon is answering ... it means we're live. It's open. You can be writing your question right now. You don't have to log in. Nobody's going to ask for your personal information. You don't have to go get your wallet or your purse to get out the credit card. It's free. Don't you love that? So type your question in, hit enter. It shows up magically here. Yes, sometimes it sneaks by me, but I will see it eventually, right? And in live real time usually. So, and then you can be asking, when we have Angela Persicke in here at 11 o'clock, you can be asking her questions along with all of our other guests, because we have some really fun things that we're going to be doing today. But if you're watching and it says rebroadcast, or you're watching us in any of the other ways that you can watch us aside from autism-live.com, we still have other ways for you to participate in the conversation. You can email us. We love getting your emails. We take great pains to make sure that we answer your emails, and sometimes we hook it up with a link saying here's the show where we covered that. Sometimes that takes a couple of days. It is that delayed gratification thing. but we are trying to get caught up on all the emails, so encourage you to be emailing us. You can also, by the way, phone into the show. If you want to call in right now, or you want to call in while we have Angela Persicke at 11 o'clock, you absolutely can. If you give us a call and it's after hours, you can leave a message and we will get back to you. Somebody will get back to you. And by the way, you can also Skype with us. We're going to be Skyping a little later on this morning with an awesome mom who's got an awesome daughter, and talking about what she's up to. So you'll want to stay tuned for that. It's about 10:20 this morning. We can Skype around the world. So if you're, I know we're in 103 countries now, I believe. So wherever you are, if you could do the math on when we're live from 9 a.m. to noon Pacific Standard Time. So you do the math and figure out during that time if you want to Skype in with us. We really enjoy being able to talk to you around the world. I was saying yesterday I have Olympic fever, and I'd love it if you guys write in and tell me which countries you're in, and I know which countries you're rooting for in the Olympics. Really, really fun. Okay, you can also Facebook us. We have this new and fabulous page on Facebook, Autism Live. We like your likes when you like us. It's very reinforcing for us. We also have a place now on the Facebook that if you want, I mentioned that we don't ask for your personal information when you're logging in to ask, you don't log in, when you're just typing in to ask a question. But if you would like, the one place that we are asking for your information is if you would like to get our new monthly newsletter that I'm working on. You can do that by going on our Facebook. There's a space there where you can give your information, give your email address, and we will send you the monthly newsletter, which will tell you about some things that we have coming up, some things for you to participate in, some contests that we're going to be having, that kind of thing. Keep you up to date. That's the newsletter, and you can find the box to sign up for that on our Facebook page. By the way, you can also tweet with us. We like it when you tweet. I always say I'm new to tweet. You have to be patient with me. I'm getting better at it, and I do like it, and I really like it when I'm interacting with you guys. So you can tweet with us. All right, I also mentioned that there are other ways to watch us other than autism-live.com. You can be watching us on Blip. Isn't that a great name? Blip TV. This is a great way if you missed episodes or missed one episode, or there's something you saw an expert on the show and you're talking to somebody and you're saying, oh, I'd love to watch that one part again because I don't remember what Dr. Jonathan Tarbox said about this and that. Or I want to show it to my mother-in-law so she can see what it is that I'm talking about when my child is engaging in this behavior. You can go put in a specific date or put in Dr. Tarbox or put in the topic search, and you can fast forward to the part of the show, pause it there. Your mother-in-law comes, you can say, oh, I want you to watch this, and hit play, and it can play for you. By the way, you can also do that on our YouTube channel. I particularly love about our YouTube channel that you can see some of those smaller clips of some of the different experts that are there. You don't have to weed through the whole episode, can search those topics, pause, rewind, share. If you want to, you see something that you really like and that you know, hey, I'd really like to share this with my friends and family, you can hit the share button and share it on your Facebook or email it to them. We love it when you do that. We love your comments on YouTube and your reviews. And speaking of reviews, we're also a free download on iTunes. So anytime you're there on iTunes, you can download it for free. That's picture and sound, and you can give us a review while you're there, which is, you know, so great. Even if you want to tell us what you don't like, it still counts as a review, which helps for more people to be able to find us on iTunes. So if you want to help more people to know about our show, that's a great way to do it. Give us a review, excuse me, on iTunes. And by the way, we're also on Ustream. So multiple ways of watching us, and we've got even more ways that are coming. And if there is a way that you would like to see us that we have not mentioned, would you do me a favor and let us know? Take one of those other ways, whether it's Facebook or email or tweet, and let us know where you'd like to see us, and we'll get working on that. We have worker bees, so we only a couple. We're a very small operation here, but we're part of a much bigger operation that we have access to BCBAs and experts on your behalf. Let us know what you need, what you want. If there's a topic that you just are saying, I don't know what to do about this, or a concern that you have, let's talk about it, and we'll get somebody in here to talk about it with you. Okay. we like to start every morning. We're a little bit late already. We like to start every morning with something that I fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. It's not the soup du jour, it's the jargon du jour. We know that part of this, being the most effective, efficient member of the team, means making friends with the jargon. I know, it's not my favorite thing. I'm going to be honest about that. And I'm sure that it's not your favorite thing either. But it can be a great thing on a lot of different levels. First of all, when we're talking to experts, we're going to be able to understand what they're saying better, and we're going to be able to ask more substantive questions if we understand and can use the jargon. I'll tell you what, too, when you're starting out, you just got to get a couple of them under your belt, and you're sitting there at the IEP meeting and you throw a couple of these terms out, and it's where you separate. As they say, it's not my favorite phrase, but the men from the boys, right? You see who understands what you're talking about, and they see, oh, this is a parent who is doing their homework, and you will see that things function slightly differently. I also have had the experience where I've seen people throwing jargon terms around that they didn't understand, but that I did, so I could say, I'm sorry, I don't know how you're using that in a word because that means this, that, and the other thing, so please explain to me what you're talking about, and you've discovered, this person does not know what they're talking about, and not the person that you want to put all your eggs into their basket for them to decide what's appropriate for your child educationally, right? So it's very, very helpful, but on a very basic level, to be able to understand what's happening with your child, what can happen with your child, and not having to go to a dictionary for 3 hours to look it up, right? So we take one word, one phrase, one anagram at a time, and we try to shed some light on it, demystify it, give you an actual definition, and we like to make fun of the actual definitions because often they have more jargon than the jargon. And then we give you a working definition that is much less specific, but gives you one of those toe holds so that you can start to understand what in the hey nanny nanny are we talking about here, right? Okay, so today's jargon term is NET. We talked a little bit about this yesterday because yesterday's term was DTT. So what is NET? NET stands for Natural Environment Training. This is training and generalization of skills within the child's natural environment. We are going to talk about generalization later on. But again, some more jargon in the jargon, right? So what's our working definition? It's the same. We have a slight mistake here. But so NET is when it's totally child driven. So when we do DTT, we were talking about this yesterday, we take a bubble and we create a 3-term contingent within that bubble where we're going to say or do something, the child's going to do a behavior, and we're going to reinforce it. And we're going to make sure that we set up circumstances so that the child is going to be successful. We're going to help them to get the right answer. In some cases, we're just going to give them the right answer and then give them the reinforcement so that they want to do it again. And then we're going to give them another opportunity to do it again. And we're going to do these very quick trials over and over and over again and praise them and give them tickles and give them whatever's reinforcing to them so that they build up some skills. Once we've done something DTT and started to learn the skill and the child's like, hey, this is not bad at all, then we want to plug it into their natural environment, right? So if we've been teaching the child red and we've been doing it in a DTT setting, when it's time to teach red, what we're going to do is not say, okay, now we're going to work on red with the child. We're going to say, what do you want to play? And we're going to give them some choices. Would you like to play on the iPad, or would you like to play Barbies, or would you like to play in the sandbox, or do you want to roll down a hill? Right? Whatever it is, and the child's going to pick what they want to do, and we're going to go and we're going to play with them. And we're going to play with them in a way that we're going to start to play with them in a way that they want to play, which may not be the most functional way that they want to play, but we're going to start out having it be their way. And then we're going to slip the lesson into this natural environment. So if we go and play Barbies and we're there with the Barbies and we're like, oh, I'm going to wear a dress. I'm going to wear this one. What color is this? And the child goes, it's red. Yay, yeah, it's red. I'm going to put the red one on. And then we go, I'm in the red dress, right? So we're in the natural environment and we are teaching and reinforcing the red and asking the child, can you give me the red one? Can you give me the red shoes? And the child gives the red shoes. Thank you. That's such a good job. You gave me the red shoes, right? But it's within the context of what they're doing in their natural environment. Very child-driven. Starting out doing what they want to do, such an important part of the connection with them. Now, there are some times when we're just going to find, we're sitting down to lunch and, that may not be their most preferred activity, but they sit down to lunch. And while we're at lunch, we're going to go, okay, so we're having lunch and let's see if we're eating anything red with lunch. Oh, we have tomatoes. Those are red, right? What else is red that's on the table? And reinforcing it. So using that natural environment constantly to be strengthening the kinds of things that we're teaching so that they have opportunity at some point. Then we're going to invite a friend over, right? A peer, and have them playing, and they're going to be doing something. Maybe they're playing blocks or whatever, or Legos, and you say to them, hey, you guys, you know what? I've got a special treat for you. But first, you guys have to have a race and see who can build the highest red tower. Okay, so only use the red ones, build a red tower. And now, they're in the natural environment. We're just giving them opportunity, so that at some point, and this is when it gets really exciting, somebody says something within the environment that isn't contrived at all, right? Their friend says to them, can I have that red one? Or they say something, which color do you want? Or somebody at the grocery store says, which color do you want? And your child says red. And you go, this is luscious. This is luscious. That's generalization, because you didn't teach that specific moment, but your child knew how to respond. Your child understood what red was. They understood how to use it, and it's brilliant. Always want to be doing things in the natural environment as much as we can. We talk all the time about how every single moment can be a teaching moment. You can't drive yourself crazy, right? You got to be able to have downtime for your child and for you, but as much as possible, outside of that downtime, everything is a teaching moment. And the key to that is making it fun, making it exciting for them, making it reinforcing for them. NET, a really fabulous thing. Okay, we always have a question of the day. The question of the day meant to get you thinking, participating. Really love it when you guys write in your questions, your answers to the question of the day on our Facebook page. We didn't have time yesterday to get to the question of the day yesterday, but we will today. So our question today is, what do you wish you could change about yourself? Ooh, right? That's an interesting question. And I can tell you, like, one of the first things that I could think of, two things, but they're interrelated for me. I wish that I could change my relationship with physical activity. I wish that I could figure out, I work on it on a regular basis, you guys. I understand the rules of ABA. I just have to make it reinforcing enough for myself, and I have not been able to. I can do it for short periods of time, but I've not been able to figure out how to do it long periods of time, but I'm working on it. I'm not giving up on myself. And of course, the other thing is I wish that I just had more energy. I just am so tired lately. I think it's a matter of age-wise and hormone-wise and all of those things, but I am exhausted. And I wish I had more energy, and everyone I know who is physically fit says to me, well, get that exercise thing together and you will have more energy. I think the difficulty is that it takes a little while, that at the beginning when you start the exercise, you're just that much more tired. And I know intellectually that I need to get over that hump, but it's getting over it behaviorally. And I know the key is to making it reinforcing. I don't know what I'm going to do. I got to try something new here. But that's what I wish I could change about myself. What would you like to change about yourself? Really interested in seeing on Facebook what you guys have to say to that. By the way, we always have a topic of the day. Our topic for this entire week is ABA for beginners. We're going back to basics. And can I tell you, I really need it. At this point in the summer, I'm just seeing I constantly have to be reminded of what I already know. Because when we're used to behaving a certain way, if we don't keep refreshers and make things reinforcing, we will see that we will slip a little bit. And I know, we're going to talk about compliance in a second here, and I know that I have a child who's willing to be compliant. He totally is. He's proven it to me over and over and over again. And I have learned over and over and over again that in order to get his compliance, I just need to reinforce him on a regular basis. I all but have this on the bathroom mirror in my home, and yet I forget it on a minute-by-minute basis. And I don't know if I'm the only one, but I think I'm going to get it like tattooed on my hand. You know, we had Nancy Allspaw Jackson in here yesterday, and she just recently got a tattoo on her wrist that says warrior. I am not so much a tattoo person because the whole needle thing. And, but, you know, I do think I need to get, instead of warrior, I need to tattoo reinforce him on my wrist so that I remember. I don't know why. That's just so hard for me personally. And yet when I do it, oh, everything gets better. So we go back to basics a lot here, and I think it's worthwhile. Even if you've been doing this for a long time, I know you know the benefit of going back to beginning. And for those of you who are new to this journey, I think it's so important that you get this beginning understanding of that. Principle number one, in order for any behavior to happen over and over and over again, it has to be personally reinforcing to the person. And by the way, that goes for everything. If somebody's engaging in a behavior that is not a behavior that you want to see, there's a reason why. There's a paycheck. They're getting a paycheck or they wouldn't keep doing it. It's just one of the laws of behavior. So ABA for beginners. All right, and to that end, we got some different things we're going to talk about. We have a generalization tip coming on later on the day. We have an executive functions tip. I love it when we talk about executive functions. We've got Angela Persicke, who's going to be with us at 11 o'clock. She is a BCBA. I love to talk to Angela because she gets so excited about the science and the research and the data. And I know I specifically asked her to come in and talk about data today, but we've got at least one question that we're going to be asking her about how do we wean our kids off of those things that aren't age appropriate anymore that they love so much, but it's not age appropriate. We got to get them to the point where they'll release, right? And we are going to start something new today that we feature a child and a family on the spectrum, a viewer who's watching, and their life and what they're doing and how great they're doing. So we've got a mom who's going to be on Skyping with us at 10:20. Jill Kravitz is going to be with us, and we're going to be talking about the awesome stuff that's happening in her house. Hey, I call ABA the autism miracle in my living room, and I know I'm not the only one experiencing this miracle. So if you are doing this and you want to be featured on the show as a parent who's getting it done to the best of your ability, we're not saying that anybody's perfect, right? But getting it done, showing up for your kid, and you want to feature your child, let us know. But we're going to do the first one today at 10:20 with Jill Kravitz. So stick with us for that. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to talk about compliance again because we need to. So stick with us. Currently in the United States, 1 in 88 children is affected by autism. 1 in 88 means something different when your child is the one. Recovery is possible. Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod, host of Autism Live, an online show about autism broadcast by CARD, the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. I'm also the mother of a child with autism, my beautiful son, Jem. You know our old joke, guess what?
Chicken butt.
Chicken butt. So we're going to take the chickens. But things weren't always so easy. I remember when Jem was first diagnosed with autism. I used to lay awake at night in bed and pray for someone or something that could help us to get our child back. My prayers were answered by Dr. Doreen Grandpichet and the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. CARD treats autism and other related disorders using the principles of ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis, which is the only scientifically proven effective treatment for autism. It is also recommended by the American Academy of Pediatrics and the U.S. Surgeon General. About a year after we started treatment with CARD, we were able to see tremendous improvement, and we got our child back.
What grade are you in?
Second.
You are a smart cookie, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Do you like school?
Yeah.
Do you have any good friends?
Yeah, Oscar.
Oscar is your best friend?
Yeah.
And my child is just one of thousands to benefit from CARD ABA therapy. Across the nation and around the world, children are making amazing progress and being given the keys to unlock their full potential.
We are extremely grateful for the amazing job CARD has done in helping our daughter. Our daughter today, just in 4 months, I think is a totally different child than when she started with CARD. I kind of see it as, it seems like her brain in a way was asleep, and now that we've gotten so many services, we've seen her wake up.
Teacher has some glasses.
Recovery is possible if you take the right steps, if you're willing to put in all the hard work. And 7.5 years, yeah, it's a lot of work. It's worth every little bit, and CARD's been there with us every step of the way.
I have 2 children with autism. I can't imagine a day without CARD or the therapists. They've been so instrumental in helping us with our kids and shaping their lives and helping us help them.
Thank you, Christina Big Alex.
Thank you, Jackie and Mariana.
We've tried other things before ABA, but the most beneficial thing has been ABA services, and I'd be the first person to tell any newly diagnosed family that you have to contact an ABA provider, and if you're lucky enough to have CARD, you're very blessed.
Recovery from autism is absolutely a possibility. We've been recovering children for over 20 years. It's just a matter of identifying the child's medical needs, understanding the child's sensory issues, and then teaching the child all of the skills they need in order to function normally.
We know there's hope for autism. Autism is treatable, and recovery from autism is possible.
Welcome back to Autism Live. So if you were just watching that, the pictures in the beginning were of my child. I have to look away. Some of those images are just too hard for me. They're just too power-packed for me because it takes me back to a moment when I didn't know what I know now. And if you're sitting someplace today and you're feeling like you're at the end of your rope, you know that old saying, tie a knot, because there's help and there's hope, and I just want you to know, been there, and it got better. It got wildly better. My son was diagnosed at 2.5. He is 9 now. He's getting ready in 2 weeks. I think 2 weeks from today. I can't even believe how fast the summer has gone. He will go back to school. He'll be in completely included 4th grade. He has been completely included, by the way, since he was 4. And when he was 3, I was told that that was not going to happen. That's how much difference a year makes. And, you know, we went, and now see, I'm going to get all emotional. We went to his first IEP when he was 3 and met with the school and met with a whole bunch of people. There was a whole, you know, that overwhelming room full of people, and they'd done their whole evaluations of him, and I had to sit there and hear how, you know, he was in the 1st percentile on this, and, you know, he's 3 years old, but he has the skills of a 6-month-old on this, and he has the skills of a 1-year-old on this, and how far behind he was. Hard, right? Just like arrows in your heart. And, you know, we were having discussions, and they offered their version of FAPE, free appropriate public education, and it was for my son to go in their most restrictive environment. A room that I had looked at and that was not going to work for me. There was just no way. There was no possibility that that was happening for my child. I saw the room, and I did not think that what was happening there was something that I could live with in terms of my child. I didn't see how progress was going to be made for my child. We had gone, my child had been part of a group kind of thing where they were supposed to learn and sing songs and all this stuff. My child, who had been singing at 1.5 and, you know, was performing with a guitar, and he'd strum the guitar, and he would go, thank you very much, and then lost all of that and stopped singing. And I thought, oh, we'll take him to this thing, and he, you know, he'll be with other children, and he'll find this so reinforcing. And he would scream like he was being peeled, and he would stim like crazy, and they put him in the weighted vest, and they put him in the chair, and oh, it was horrible. This is before we started ABA. Have to be clear about this. This was not ABA. And so I saw this most restrictive room and went, we're not doing that. We are not doing that. We are fighting for ABA, 40 hours at home for this 3-year-old, because I'd done the research and I knew that that's really what needed to happen, 25 to 40 hours. And I said, we're shooting for 40, so that if we fall short, we'll be that much, you know what I mean? If you ask for 40 and you get 35, that's better than getting 15, right? And I let everybody know that I meant business, that that's what we were going to do, no matter what. And I was rigid on it. I did not know how that was going to happen, but I was like, it's happening. You know, it was happening some way or another. And because there wasn't another option. I didn't see that there was another option. But in any case, sat there in that room, and at one point, one of the people said, well, I don't really understand, what is it that you want? And I said, I want for my child to go to kindergarten on time, at grade level, with neurotypical peers. I want him caught up by the first day of kindergarten. And she said to me, oh, well, you know, I don't, first of all, she said, well, I don't know that that's possible. And she said, but if it were possible, it would be really hard. And there was, you know, some eye rolling and stuff. And it was really a defining moment for me, because, you know, and I always say, you know, sometimes you feel that marble drop. It's just that feeling in your stomach, and everything gets crystal clear, and it's almost like stuff goes into slow motion. And I don't know what I must have looked like. I'd love to have a videotape, because I think I sprouted fans, you know, like a snake out the side of my head, because everybody in the room got very still. And I leaned forward and I said to that woman, you know what? I'm an autism mom. Do not tell me about hard. I know all about hard. Let's talk about what's possible. That's what I want to talk about. And everybody was like, oh, okay, let's, you know, talk about something else. We don't need to get upset. And it wasn't like I was yelling. I was deadly silent kind of thing. But it was one of those moments where I went, that's the truth of it. This is hard. I know all about hard, but let's talk about what's possible. And I realized that some of the people in the room didn't know what was possible. And that was a big, big thing for me to realize, that I had more of an idea about what was possible than some of the people in the room. And, you know, I was inflexible, and we prevailed, I will say that, and with a lot of tears and a lot of hard work, and the school district filed suit against us. Let's say there was nothing easy about this at all, right? They filed due process against us twice, that year and then 2 years later. But, you know, everything came out okay. I can tell you that everything came out okay, and my son did get 40 hours of therapy for that year, from the time he was 3 till he was 4. Now let's remember that in the first meeting they were saying to us, our recommendation is that he go in the most restricted environment. These were the kids who were the hardest cases. There were kids with helmets, hitting their head against the wall in that room, right? That was where they felt was appropriate for my son, and I have no doubt that for the setups that they had, it was the only one that they felt that they could offer him at that point. But he stayed home for a year and did ABA, 40 hours of ABA at home. And a year later, they evaluated him, a different person who had not been there at that first meeting. And she came back and said, you know, we're offering him full inclusion in the Fun for Fours program, the preschool program, full inclusion, that he be with the rest of the kids, the completely typically developing kids. And I remember my jaw, I was like, what? And I said, you're offering him inclusion in nursery school? And she said, well, yeah, he's ready. And And I just burst into tears, and I said, "You're kidding me." And she said, "Why are you so shocked? He's doing so well. Why are you shocked?" And I said, "Because you know that a year ago they wanted to put him in this placement." And she said, "This child? Seriously? I need to go back and look at the things. But really? Why?" And because that's how much progress he had made in a year. And so he did go to fully included preschool the next year. He went with an aide. Let's be clear about that. And he went with an aide from CARD. He went with Peter Farrig, in fact, who we've from time to time had on the show and I talk about all the time. And halfway through the school year, he transitioned to a school aide. And then the next fall, he went off to kindergarten on the first day, and he was caught up. He was caught up. He was at grade level, at the right age, and he has been caught up ever since. He excels at school. This is the boy that they said, "Oh, well, we don't know if that's going to be possible. And if it is, it's going to be hard." Well, you can take your hard, right? Let's talk about what's possible. Okay, so, I look at those pictures of my son and I go, oh, but some of those were from days when I didn't know. So if you're in a place where you don't know, you know what? Come in for a hug, because I'm telling you it's going to get better. But it's going to be hard, but you got to get 100% clear on what your child needs. And all of our kids are different, but we do know from science that early on, 25 to 40 hours a week is crucial. Absolutely crucial to get the best possible results. Not going to be easy. Not going to be easy, but, right? We know all about hard, but it's possible. It's possible. We found a way to do it, and man, if we could, you can. Trust me, because I hear from you guys. You guys have so much more going on than I did in terms of what's benefits, the strength, the inner strength that you guys had. I was a mess, and still we worked it out. So you can too. All right, I promised you we're going to talk about compliance, and now I've totally gone off the rails here. And I've got this graphic up here that compliance equals, and fill in the blank. Fill in the blank, because compliance equals everything. And it doesn't matter how old your child is. It doesn't matter how young your child is. If you've got a 2-year-old and you've got compliance, you have a happy life, right? If you've got an 8-year-old and you've got compliance, then life is good. If you have an 18-year-old and you have compliance, then life is good. So what do we mean by compliance? Compliance is when you ask them to do something, they not only do it and comply with it, but that they do it happily. Because we all want to get to the point where our children comply because they want to. Well, that's a cute magic trick, isn't it? How in the heck do we make that happen? And it's simpler than you think. Although it can feel hard when you're trying to do it, right? But the way that we get compliance at that level is by making it worth their while. So we constantly want to be making sure that we're clear with ourselves, first of all, what the most important thing is. We always talk about setting priorities. What is it that you really, because sometimes there's conflicting things that you want your child to comply with. So what's the most important thing? You say, oh, well, I want you to comply and I want you to make friends and I want you to be with your friends. But you also want them to have limits, that they won't just do whatever their friends want them to do, right? So important that we're clear in the moment with what we think successful compliance is, and that we make that abundantly clear to our children, and that we reinforce it. Now, different levels and different age, it's going to be vastly different. So for the 2-year-old that you're trying to gain compliance with, what you're trying to do is set up circumstances where they see how awesome it is for them when they comply. And we talked a little bit last week about conditioned reinforcers. For a 2-year-old who's on the autism spectrum, they may not find praise reinforcing. So we do what we call conditioned reinforcing, where we pair something that is reinforcing, like Baby Einstein or Thomas the Tank Engine or potato chips or jelly beans friends or Buzz Lightyear, whatever it is that the child finds reinforcing, when the child engages in the behavior that we want, in this case compliance, they get that reinforcement, but they also get a boatload of praise that comes with it. So you ask the child, you know, come here, and initially the child's like, why would I want to do that? First of all, they don't understand what come here means. They don't know why you want them to come there, and they don't, what's in it for me? Why would I want to come to where you are? I'm happy over here. You know, what do you want from me? So we're going to help them through that and, you know, literally pick them up and walk them over to us and go, that's coming here. Good job. And we're giving them the praise, right? And they're like, what? You know, what are you so happy and excited about, right? And then we put them back where they were, and we go back to where we are. We say, come here. And, you know, not doing it. Oh, okay. So we walk them and go, this is coming here. Good, coming here. Tickle, 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 because that's reinforcing, but we're giving the praise. Good job, right? And so now we're not waiting a half hour, by the way. This is how quick we do it. Put them back over, they say, come here. And now we reach out our arms. Maybe we don't actually walk them over, but we reach out our arms, and the child's like, well, you know, it hasn't been bad when I've gone over there. It's been kind of good for me. So, okay, I'll bite. And they start to come over, and now, you know, they're doing it without the full physical prompt. So you're breaking out the big reinforcement, the potato chip, the jelly bean, but you're making sure that you're praising with it. You're pairing that reinforcement of whatever the tangible is, the Buzz Lightyear or the potato chip or whatever, but you're doing big praise too. Maybe it's tickles and praise, but you're making sure that the praise goes there too. Because what we're doing, we're teaching two things there. We're teaching when you comply, it's good. It's good, it's good, it's good. It's a party. The lights go on. Woohoo. It's wonderful. And we're also pairing the praise with it. So we're teaching them that praise is something that's good. It's so good and it feels good. And over time, what we're going to do is, you know, if we start out with giving a jelly bean, and the child gets the skill, right? We're not going to fade out that reinforcer, that primary reinforcer, until the child is complying on a regular basis. So we get to the point where you say, come here, and the child comes over. They can't wait to come over, right? Then we're going to start to give maybe a half a jelly bean and then a quarter of a jelly bean, right? We're going to wean them off the jelly bean, but we're not going to wean them off the praise. Not right then. We're going to make the praise even more. They come over and you give it a little piece of jelly bean and you go, wow, that was so awesome. You're the greatest. You're a rock star. You're fabulous. You go over the top. It's okay. Nobody gets hurt by it, right? Doesn't cost anything. And the child goes, well, all right, they're losing their mind here, but you know, it's kind of fun. It's a party. So that over time, you can start to, obviously, you know, you don't want to have a child who's in 5th grade and you say, come here, and they come over and you're going, that was fabulous, losing your mind. You're going to start to taper that off too. But we never want to get to the point where we're not praising at all, because that's when the compliance goes, where'd you go? Where'd you go? Where's the compliance, right? This is what I was talking about earlier that I want to tattooed on my arm. Remember to praise him. Because, you know, as parents and as our kids progress, and I can tell you my child has progressed so much, but there are still things. You know, we went to a party last night, and there were a lot of kids, there were a lot of running around. My son did great, and he played with the other kids. He's still working on some things socially, though, and I'm that mom. I want him to excel, so I'm over there going, you know, make sure you answer that child. Are you playing this? Are you giving them a turn to do what they want to? Wop, 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 right? When I would have done better, I'm going to write it there with a ballpoint pen, to have said, what a great job you're doing playing with your friends, right? Which would have been so reinforcing to him that he would just have upped his, he already knows what the rules are. And I reminded him of the rules before we got there, and I reminded him of the rules afterwards. I did not need to nag him in the moment. I would have gotten more compliance had I just remembered to tell him, you're doing an awesome, good job. What a good friend you are. I'm so proud of you, and give him a little ruffle of the hair, you know. But I forget on a daily basis, so on a minute-by-minute basis. But we want to, and I would say that that's a further stage along the way. First, you got to pair the reinforcement with the thing that's already reinforcing, right? And for some of you, it means figuring out what the reinforcer is. And that's, you know, that continues to change too, because at some point, I will tell you the flip side of when your child doesn't find when they're still finding something that isn't age appropriate reinforcing, there's the flip side too, where you think that they're still finding it reinforcing and they're not anymore. And so the behavior isn't being maintained because you're like, oh, well, you know, we'll watch some cartoons later. And they do get to a point sometimes they're like, Mom, you know, I don't watch cartoons anymore, right? So we always have to be mindful of what's reinforcing right now and be building other reinforcers. And I suspect that's one of the things that Angela Persicke is going to talk about when we talk about how to phase out those toys that are so reinforcing that are not age appropriate. It's a hard nut to crack. But in any case, pairing reinforcement, pairing praise as a reinforcer, and then once we've accomplished that, then we just need to remember to praise our kids a lot. We will get more compliance. You know what they say about you get more with honey than with vinegar. It's the same thing with our kids. If we've done this right, we have to pair the praise so that they find that reinforcing, but when they do, it is a tool that we have to keep taken out of the tool belt. It's there, it's at our disposal. As I said, it's free. It's easy enough to give. Sometimes it feels like it's so stinking hard. We had this conversation the other day where there is somebody that I want to get some compliance from, and it's just very hard for me to find the way to praise them. I gotta suck it up and praise them because I know I'm not going to get the compliance until I do. Oh, I just want to lecture them. I just want to lecture this person and go, look, gotta let that go. It's not productive. I know it doesn't work. I gotta suck it up and give the praise. It's hard sometimes, but for our kids, most of the time it's not. They can, you know, make us crazy sometimes, but most of the time we love them enough that we can find something to praise them for. Even if you have to ask them to do something you know they love, find the excuse. Praise them, praise them, praise them. You will get more compliance and a child who's happy to comply. This is when life gets good. So, you know, we have to do it on a regular basis, even if we have to write it in ballpoint pen on our wrist. Okay, it is that time of the day when we show the A word. This is an amazing documentary, and take a look and notice how they're praising this little boy in the video. Everybody, especially in the beginning of this particular clip. The boy is Jack Riley. He is now 3 years old in the video. This is a real child who was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2. He is now 3. He's got a new baby sister. And, you know, he is making so much progress, which doesn't mean that everything is all steps forward, which doesn't mean that he never has tantrums. And in the beginning, the parents are talking about that. But take a look at the crazy good eye contact that he's making, very natural eye contact that he's making. There is one point when the therapist has to ask him for eye contact, but then he's able to do it like that. Take a look at how reinforced he is by praise. Take a look at how interested he is in other people, and hear these sentences that he is starting to say because he's working on categories and he's starting to say sentences. Take a look. This is the A word.
I know a cute little blue-eyed boy, and his name is Jack.
Jack Riley.
He got a big, warm, blue-eyed soul that makes your heart beat fast.
Hi, Jessica. Jessica's daddy. That's right. Who's this? Who's this? Bobby. And who's that? Daddy.
Who's that?
Over there? Who's that? Good.
And I totally think he's just aware of a lot of things now. People's names.
How is the behavior team going with the inflexibilities?
He's still a big control guy. He still wants it the way he wants it.
In sessions, he was very, he'd get very upset and
and he gets upset fast, like for reasons that didn't used to upset him. He gets upset fast, and then once he's upset, everything upsets him.
Were they really long?
But it was a good half hour, the whole tantrum, which is long for him. Really long.
Yeah.
And he would just get so upset.
Yeah, everyone tells us, it's not unexpected. He's 3 and blah, 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 but
so we get it, we know it.
Still, it's harsh. Yeah, he's 3, but he's our 3-year-old.
Tell me a vehicle.
Good
Good job. Tell me another vehicle.
Airplane
is a vehicle. Yay. Okay, 2 more. Okay. Tell me a food.
I can't eat food.
Pancake is a food.
Yeah.
Tell me another food. Tell me another one.
Food.
Yeah. Cereal bar
is a food. Yeah.
But he said zebra. Okay, Jack ready?
Yes.
Good job. Tell me an animal.
Is it a animal?
What's that?
Tell me one more time. What's an animal?
Is it a animal? Is it a
Rhinoceros.
Rhinoceros. Oh, okay, it's an animal. Tell me another animal.
Is it
I know. Tell me another one. Oh, here are your shoes. What animal is that?
Froggy.
Froggy is a what? No, frog is a
Arrow.
good. So tell me another animal.
Is it a animal?
Rhinoceros is an animal, and tell me another one.
More pancake.
No, look at me. No, no, look at me.
Is it a animal?
There you go. Thank you. Pancakes are not animals, silly.
There's a clue from it.
More pancake.
Yeah, and I don't mind if he looks around to like get clues, get hints. That's totally fine. Yes, I've been running sessions a little bit more like that lately, just because his behaviors have been really high. Just like if we're jumping on the bed or dancing, I'll stop for a minute and ask him like 3 or 4 questions, and then we'll just keep dancing or whatever we're doing. Let me probe. There's some stuff real quick.
What are you going to be probing?
Actions. So I just want to see if he already knows it, then I won't even bother introducing it. Give me kissing. Oh, good. What are the kids doing?
He's kissing.
Oh, they're kissing. Can you show me kissing? Oh, good job. Give me cleaning. Okay, good. What's the girl doing?
She's cleaning.
She's cleaning. Good job.
Water.
Okay, one more. Can I have it? One more. Give me crying. What's the baby doing?
He's babying.
What's she doing? What's the baby doing?
She's baby.
She's wah. She's crying.
She's crying.
Oh, okay. Maybe we'll do crying.
He's kissing.
He's kissing. What about this one? What's she doing there?
She's cooking.
Oh, she's cooking. Okay. And what's this one? What's she doing?
She's crying.
Oh, okay. So basically, he knows all of them. All right, cool. All right. What are they doing?
She's dirty.
They're what?
There's cooking.
Oh, they're cooking. Good job.
What's that cooking? What's that cooking?
Mom is cooking?
What's that cooking?
Lots of cooking? Oh, okay, cool. All right, all done. Thank you.
Welcome back. That is the A word. I can't say enough about this. I'm a little addicted to it. I love to watch it. And I want to encourage you, you can be watching it on YouTube. They have their very own YouTube channel. You can go back and watch from the beginning so you can see the arc. You can see the progress that this little boy is making. It's in the beginning there, did you see the moment when they were saying, can you say who is who? And he's, who do you see? And he was saying, Daddy and Mommy and Jessica. And then he was saying the filmmaker, Suzanne. And they were going, yay, just crazy praising him. And he, and he got that look on his face. I'm special, I'm sparkly. How lovely, how wonderful. What a fabulous gift to give our children, that they understand when somebody is praising you, that it feels good. Our kids don't come that way. They don't come packaged that way. They're not pre-programmed all the time to feel that way. But we can get them to the point where they love that, where they absolutely love that. And notice how into people he is right now. They've been doing a lot of different lessons with him, and the therapist even said, a lot of the stuff that I'm doing with him right now is very natural environment training, that she's letting him play and jump on the bed when she's teaching him lessons, because he finds it so reinforcing. You will see if you watch some of the earlier episodes, though, that they do a lot of DTT and they do a lot of NET with him too. And they're also working with him on some fluency-based training on some different things, so that he gets the idea. When we do work on fluency, we're working so that somebody can do the skill at the proper speed and time, so that it's really just like everybody else. You know how when you're starting out learning a new skill, sometimes you got to really slow it down, like tying shoes, but then at some point, you just tie shoes, right? And there's a way we can work on that with kids as well. So tremendous progress that this little boy is making, tremendous progress that the parents are making, because it's not easy. It's not easy. It's very humbling to learn a whole new way of dealing with things that happen before a behavior and consequences. I was sharing yesterday that, I am not always the best at, because I know how important it is to keep my consequences consistent, and yet I am a human being and I don't always get it right. And you know what? I give us all permission to not get it right all the time. Doesn't make you a bad parent. It just doesn't. It makes you a human being. Welcome to the human race. But when we can be consistent, we see more progress. So there's lots of reason to be consistent. Doesn't mean that it always happens, because life gets in the way sometimes. And I gotta say to you, that's not the worst thing, right? We start out sometimes with a child that we don't get to have a life like anybody else, because autism, it's, all autism all the time channel in our homes, right? And it's a measure of how well your child is doing when life intrudes and you feel like you can relax a little bit. I just give you the cautionary statement that I give myself. It's like, well, okay, we're going to let life intrude and we're going to accept that, but then we got to get back down to basics so that we get more of the good things, right? Yeah, I'm speaking to myself as much as I'm speaking to anybody else. We were talking about the bedtime ritual thing. And it's a place where we struggle, because you know why? When I'm late at night, and I'm talking about 9:15, at 9:15 I go, oh, so tired. And it's when I am least likely to hold up consequences. And guess who's smart enough to know that? My child. And so he will push my buttons, push my buttons. And, I said that one of the things that we have done in the last couple of weeks was that I made a deal with him. And I found we were in a store and he saw this new SpongeBob thing where you can put it on your computer and you can create your own cartoon with it. It allows you to customize the backgrounds and make the frames and edit it and put the characters in and put the voiceover in. And, this is right up my son's alley at this point. He wanted that program. And guess what? I wanted him to have that program because I want to feed that creativity that he's got. But I said to him, I was a discerning ABA parent for a moment, and I looked at the toy and looked at him and saw how reinforcing, and I said, well, do you want to work for this? And he was like, well, I don't know, what would I have to do? And I said, well, the bedtime thing, I would need for you to go to bed first time I ask you and stay in bed and no conversations, and it was very clear, defined all the rules, and I said, and I would need for you to do it 7 nights in a row. 7 nights in a row! I said, well, it's an expensive toy. It wasn't all that expensive, actually. And, but, milking it. I gotta get some compliance here, right? And I said, I know you can do it. It's not that it's a problem. It's just, are you willing to do it for this, right? And we are at that point. When he was 2, forget it. We couldn't have had that conversation. But we are at that point right now. So he agreed to it. We shook on it. And he did it. He did the 7 nights. And so what do I do on the 8th night after he gets the actual prize? It was 2 nights ago. Michael Phelps was going to break the record, and he was already in bed, had gone up to bed because we'd set a pattern, got up to bed, had said, I'm going to bed, and was being all quiet, and I went up and got him out of bed to have him come down and watch TV. Yes, sometimes. So last night we, were in the neighborhood of, he said, oh, well, I want to stay up and watch the Olympics tonight. And I said, we're not breaking any records tonight. And it was a full-on discussion. So not my smartest parenting move, but, sometimes you make exceptions. And I bring that up just to demonstrate for you that I always like to remind you, I am not an expert. I'm just in the trenches with you. And sometimes my, human error is very much a part of this. So in any case, I want to get back to the A word. I want to remind you, watch this lovely, lovely series, and you can go back, watch from the beginning, continue to watch. There are a couple of episodes we're a little bit behind in terms of what we're watching, so you can take a look and see what Jack Riley is up to. But he is an amazing young man, and his parents are doing a really good job. They're not doing a perfect job, and I hope you see that too, so that you cut yourself some slack, that none of us is going to do this perfect. There's no such thing. I even asked the BCBAs here, the board certified behavior analysts who have kids, I'm like, are you so good at this at home too? And they go, oh no, there's times when I blow it. And I go, all right then. Okay. All right. It's like painting a canvas. We're all painting away, and sometimes you go, oh, I don't think that's what needs to be in this painting. And other times, you kind of go with the flow and see where it leads, but there's no such thing as perfect. There's no such thing as perfect. And we cut ourselves some slack. Okay, we have to take a break, and I'm really excited that we get to show to you right now. We went to ABA International a couple of months ago, and it was an amazing event up in Seattle, and I really want to encourage you, if you can get to any of these events. They have the big event once a year, international event where everybody comes, but then they have regional events throughout the year, and if you can go, oh my goodness, the access to experts, it was wonderful. It was, for an autism parent, it was like being at Disneyland. It was just amazing. There just wasn't enough time to get to everything, to see everybody, to talk to everybody, but we did talk to a lot of people on your behalf, and we've been showing you some of those interviews, and today we have the wonderful Andy Bondi. If you don't know who Andy Bondi is, he and his wife are the ones who pioneered the PECS, Picture Exchange System. He speaks all over the world, is just an amazing gentleman, and we had an opportunity to sit down with him for a few minutes to talk about some things going on with PECS right before he was leaving to get on the plane, and it was wonderful. Just thought he was a sheer delight. So take a look at Andy Bondi, and we'll be back in just a few minutes.
My wife, Lori Frost, and I developed PECS over 25 years ago. The idea was to help very young children with autism and other disabilities be able to learn how to functionally communicate, that is, interact with other people. There had been a lot of work on picture-based systems then, but they all involved teaching children to point to pictures. And a lot of children with autism would interact with a picture, but continue to ignore the people around them. So the simple idea in the beginning was to motivate the child to want something, figure out what does he really like. It could be something to eat, something to play with, something to do. And then teach him, instead of grabbing for that thing, pick up that one picture in front of you, hand it to the nice person next to you, and they'll give you what you want. And that was the very beginning of PECS. everyone has that fear about either interfering with speech or blocking the development of speech using picture systems, PECs, or even sign language. The reality is people have looked for that problem for over 40 years, and no one has found any evidence of it. So when I speak to parents, I don't even wait for them to tell me what they're afraid of. I tell them I know what you're afraid of. But many other people have had the same fear. So we've looked for this very, very carefully. And the problem, especially in autism, is not that the child can't speak, is that he doesn't communicate. He doesn't interact with other people to get things done. We're often like furniture. So if I'm holding candy, great, I can take the candy out of your hand. But if the candy is on top of the table and I can't reach it, I'm just going to keep trying to climb on the table. I'm not going to turn to mom and look at her and look at the candy and point, or I'm just going to deal with that candy in and of itself. So the whole point about PECs is, no, people are important. You have to interact with people. Gives them lots of chances to then be near us, listen to what we're saying, practice making sounds, putting sounds together. There are a lot of skills that are needed to get speech going. It's not just one day the kid's going to look and say, thanks, Mom, you've been great. You know, it comes in really slowly for typically developing children. We don't think of it that way because we don't notice how much teaching we're doing with typical children. It seems natural. But research shows that by the time a typical child's about 2 years old, they've practiced using their voice about 1 million to 1.5 million times. That's a lot of work. So with PECs, especially for the younger children, we need to get that interaction going. Of course, we're going to work on everything that gets speech going. The reality is, though, some children never develop speech, and we don't know why. Anyone who guarantees that I'm going to make your non-speaking child talk in 6 months or a year, they're not being ethical because they cannot make that guarantee. We watched over 80 children in the Delaware public school system learning PECs when they were younger than 5 years old. And the vast majority of them acquired speech. And the ones who were acquiring speech eventually developed just as much speech as the kids who had some speech coming in. They had the same kind of outcomes. Same number of kids went on to regular school who had a little bit of speech coming in versus had none and started on PECs. So again, learning to use PECs never interfered with acquiring speech or making that tremendous academic gain that a lot of us would like to look.
And in the meantime, when you get the functional communication skills going, the payoff is that you get less challenging behavior and the ability to work on more things, right?
Yes, I mean, that's been like a freebie. Yeah. Obviously we need to sometimes do a functional assessment and figure out why is he doing that. But there's also studies showing that just teaching functional communication with the PECs leads to improved performance. It's not magic. Doesn't happen for everything.
It feels magic to parents.
Oh, it does. And it feels that way. Hey, it doesn't hurt as much either.
Right.
We know everybody likes technology, and technology can be beneficial. So everybody wants an iPad. It's really cool. The risk, of course, is that some children with autism will learn how to play with an iPad and then be more isolated. So our concern is to make sure that any kind of app for an iPad uses the same principles that we've built into PECs. So the first app that we have for an iPad that's going to come out this summer is just designed to help with discrimination. It will not be a full communication system, but sometimes children have trouble with choosing an apple versus sock. And one of the critical issues for effective learning is feedback, getting quick feedback. And the nice thing about an iPad is we've essentially programmed the device that as soon as the child touches the right picture, it lights up, it grows bigger, it says a word, so it gives them immediate feedback like, yeah, you've done something really good. Of course, we follow through with giving them the item, but the device is quicker than anybody can be. So then probably in the fall sometime we'll come up with an app that it's more comprehensive, but it's really designed for children who already have some sentence structure and beyond. That is, there's no research showing that using any of these devices leads to quicker initial acquisition of vocabulary, but it certainly helps with the expansion of vocabulary for some kids. Go to PECS.com. You can get to the U.S. company there. We have offices in 13 countries and around the world, so if people speak another language, they can just go find the language of their choice and probably get to a company that's speaking that language too.
That was Andy Bondi, and can I just tell you, he was just so delightful. He and his wife, we tried to coerce her to sit down with us too, and she said, no, talk to Andy. But he was just so delightful, so sweet. We had the opportunity to hear him speak a couple of times while we were there, and such a wonderful, compassionate person who he and his wife together really created the PECS, the Picture Exchange System. This whole idea of giving kids who don't otherwise have a way of communicating a really easy beginning way to communicate by exchanging a picture for the thing that they want. There are very specific ways in which you want to use this, and you want to get PECS trained if you're going to use PECS. But we're going to be doing a week coming up soon just on functional communication skills. And the thing that I most want you to hear, because I know I say it from time to time, but you know, have Andy Bondi say it is just a different thing, right? But I find it really interesting that, you know, we all have that, you know, is my child going to be able to speak moment, right? Or not. For some people, it's much more than a moment. But you know, and when you start therapy, and at some point for some of us, the therapist will say, you know, well, we're going to work for speech, but we're going to start with functional communication skills. And for some people, that means working on sign, depending on the child's skill ability. For some people, it means working on an iconic communication system, such as PECS. Or it could mean, you know, moving directly to technology, where you can use something like PECS with technology. And I know that I've talked to parents, and I know we didn't ever get to that point, but we were close. Can I just tell you? It was under discussion, and I remember thinking, oh, you know, are they giving up? And you think, well, you know, and I even heard people say, well, we don't want to teach sign language because then the child won't speak. But you know what? The studies don't hold that up. It just isn't the reality. That we see that study after study shows that in actuality, if the child is having trouble communicating and you make it really easy for them to communicate, it actually makes it possible for a lot of those kids to pick up spoken language that much faster, because you've got the way in now. And we see those challenging behaviors diminish, and in some cases go away. The child isn't tantruming as much, so we can get more teaching time in, and the child understands what's happening and communicate their needs to you. So if you are somebody at home who has started therapy and they're talking with you about functional communication, do not be afraid. It does not mean that your child is necessarily not going to speak. Yeah, there are some kids who don't ever get to spoken language, and that I can't even imagine how devastating. But all of our kids can get to functional communication, and that's crucial. I know we all want for our kids to be able to say, Mom, I love you, Dad, I love you, all of those different things. But if they can say it in some way that is substantive, isn't that better than not being able to communicate with your child at all? These tough topics, right? But functional communication is beneficial for all of our kids, and for the vast majority of our kids, it will lead to that spoken language that much faster. And in any case, you know you want functional communications on board. It does diminish that challenging behavior. Look, if I can point to something and say to you, I need this, I don't have to tantrum. And that's a beautiful thing. Okay, we have to take a short break. I want to thank Andy Bondi again for giving us his time, and we hope we can have him on the show live via Skype at some point. But in any case, I want to take a short break, and then we are going to welcome to the show Jill Kravitz, a mom who we're featuring this week, and featuring her child, because she's got a lot going on, but she's getting it done. And I want you to know that there are people out there who are finding their way. So we're going to talk to Jill in just a minute. Stick with us.
is a revolutionary web-based program that incorporates comprehensive assessment, curriculum design, progress tracking, and treatment evaluation for children with autism all in one place. Developed by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. Our approach is based on over 40 years of research on the principles of learning and their application to improving the lives of children with autism. How does Skills work? Created with speed and simplicity in mind, Skills was modeled on an easy 3-step process. Step 1. Start assessment. Step 1 begins with our intelligent assessment system, which consists of a series of questions. This assessment is essential to identifying your child's level of skills compared to their typical peers across all areas of development. This includes assessing social, motor, language, adaptive, play, cognition, executive functions, and academic skills. Every skill has an assigned age which indicates when the skill emerges during typical development. This means that each child is automatically presented only with lessons that are relevant to his or her age. Step 2. Choosing activities. It's now easier than ever to build an individualized treatment plan. In Step 2, you are presented with an individualized pool of activities that are directly linked to your student's assessment results. Each activity represents a specific skill that has been indicated by the assessment as needing to be taught. Activities are categorized by curriculum and then by lesson. There are 3 main types of skills: building blocks, fundamental, and expansion skills. Fundamental skills are necessary for successful everyday functioning. Building blocks are prerequisites to a fundamental skill. Expansion skills are non-essential skills, but may provide further enrichment in certain areas. After reviewing the activities available to you, you can quickly add your chosen activities to the treatment plan by simply checking the box and clicking the button. Step 3. Start treatment. Once you have selected and added the activities you want, you are ready to begin teaching. Skills provides you with all the tools necessary to design and manage an effective curriculum plan, such as printable activity guides that are customizable by the teacher, supplemental teaching aids including printable data sheets, teaching guides, visual aids, worksheets, and tracking forms, detailed IEP goals and benchmarks for each activity, brief and visually appealing video tutorials, a variety of treatment progress and clinical timeline charts, and lots more. And since Skills is completely web-based, everything you need is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in one easy-to-access location. Skills users even benefit from unlimited access to a support community where they can ask questions and share ideas with a skills expert. Skills is always with you.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod, and I'm always asking you guys to participate in the conversation and tell us what you'd like to see and what you'd like to hear us talking about, and if you want to be on the show, to write into us. And you know, you guys are writing to us and telling us, and I want you to know we hear you, and we're starting to put some different segments in based on what kinds of things you guys write into us. And we had a mom write into us and say, you know, do you ever feature some of the kids that the parents are watching to show people what kinds of things that they're doing? And I said, you know, that's a great idea. How about you be our first guest for this? And because you guys have superstar children and you guys are superstar parents. And so this is a new segment that we want to feature on a regular basis about kids who are stars, and parents that are stars, and practitioners and teachers that are stars, because man, you guys are my heroes. I know the kinds of things that you're doing, and you're defying gravity, right? and I love that. You're an inspiration to all of us. So right now via Skype, we have awesome superstar mom, Jill Kravitz. Jill, are you there with us?
I am here. Hi.
Thank you so much for being here. And I have to start with asking permission. Do we have your permission to be videotaping you and showing your image and images?
You have my permission.
Thank you so much. So, Jill, you're a mom, and you wrote into us, and you have a daughter who is on the spectrum, correct?
Correct.
Tell us a little bit about Zoe.
Zoe is the most amazing, beautiful, just the most wonderful little girl. In the last year, we had her diagnosed, and we put her in a full-time program where she goes every day from 9 to 4 o'clock. She gets the ABA therapy. She gets speech 4 times a week. She is able to play where it's a private, I like to say it's kind of like a private preschool camp, especially over the summer, because the kids really do have fun. But we were not sure would she ever speak. She now will not stop talking. And it's the best thing. And our first speech therapist that came to the home through the district said, I have no doubt, I know Zoe's going to speak. She used to hum any nursery rhyme that she heard. She could hum it back. It was amazing. That was her way of expressing herself. Now she'll say, and probably her favorite thing to do, one of the favorite things to do is use the iPad and the iPhone. And I swear she could use it probably better than most people. She knows how to videotape herself. She's only 3 years old, and it's amazing, and she's happy. She this morning was saying tickle, tickle, tickle. Wants to be tickled, was taping herself. I just can't say enough of how we are so pleased and feel like it's a dream come true and a miracle that everything's happening for her. So
I'm so thrilled that she's doing so well. And you said that she's 3 years old now?
She's 3.5.
3.5.
Yeah.
Wonderful. But diagnosed at 2 or 2.5?
It was just at 2 years old.
Okay. And is she your only child?
She's our only child, and we're not having any more, and we just want to focus on her. I come from, as well as my husband, 2 siblings. And, you know, I used to say, oh, I want to have a few children. And until you actually do, which we were blessed and lucky enough to have one, we just feel we're going to give all of her our attention.
Yeah.
And
I hear that. Can I tell you, though, I have a boy who is now 9, and we at some point had talked about having more children. And then my son got diagnosed, and we said, no, we're going to give him all our attention. And now we're looking at adopting. So just know, like, you can get to the point where you reverse on that. Just warning you ahead of time.
Right. Never say never.
Never say never.
I love kids. I do. I love.
But I appreciate that you know, you realize, okay, we got some work ahead of us and we want to focus. I can understand and appreciate that. That's how we felt too. But tell me a little bit about what kinds of things did you see in Zoe that led you to take you to get her diagnosed?
Okay, that's a good question. It was pointed out by some other people, and we just noticed as well when she was with other kids, she would not sit still. I took her to those early childhood classes, and it just her ability to, you know, sit, and of course kids do run around, but it was very extreme. She just, and not looking at us when I would call her name, wasn't even responding, you know, nothing. And then we went to the pediatrician, and they had us do a checklist, and everything was really, you know, is your child looking at you? No. You know, everything that we responded to was no, and the pediatrician said, well, this doesn't mean, but it may mean that, you know, this is a sign of autism. My sister-in-law also, I'm not going to mention the name, but my nephew as well has, and he's mainstream now, but he's autistic as well. He went, so that's how I learned how to, once the district felt off, so the psychologist said, we believe that she is autistic, and then I went through the University of Minnesota and then they helped us. But
interesting then. So you were familiar already with autism and already had an idea that there was some things that could be done that could be beneficial if he's now mainstreamed.
A little bit, not to the extent that obviously now that I'm a mother of a child and things, I even, want to maybe do something as a career for kids with autism, because I did have a teaching background before this.
Awesome.
But yeah, I really didn't have any idea, just a little bit from, certain things of my nephew and, but not as I went through it. So yeah, it was.
Well, Jill, I gotta say, we've got a show coming up in the near future where we're going to be talking about how desperately BCBAs are needed around the world, and that if you're looking for a career and you already were a teacher and you love children, that BCBA, you want to talk about job security. Unfortunately, with the numbers as high as they are, it's so many BCBAs are needed right now, and with insurance reform happening, they don't have enough, and so they're looking for if you're looking for some job security, being a BCBA is a possibility.
What does that stand for, BCBA?
It stands for Board Certified Behavior Analyst. There are programs all over. I'm aware of a couple close to you as well, where you can get the basic, and then there's a 1-year certification to take your test, to do your boards, and it's a great career, I will tell you, and that job security, which cannot be understated in this economy.
Right.
So we'll have to talk. We'll have to tell you when that show is coming up. But I want to get back to your relationship with Zoe, and I'm sure that along the way there have been some times when it's been hard. How have you gotten through the hard times to be able to get the level of help that you're getting her and to be able to hold it together?
Oh, also a very good question. I think what keeps me going, honestly, because we have my husband as well, we have so much love for her that we realize it's going to be extremely stressful. And there's times, for example, we recently had a psychologist, and I'm more involved. My husband is, but because he is working, and he's there when he can, but and I'm much more able to, go and do things and research and find out. The psychologist at the place where she goes to school, where they do the testing, I had met with one of the psychologists. She has come to the home, worked with me on life skills, in addition to me going once a week to her school to observe. But if anyone could get this, any parent, I think, could use this anyway. But we were having, she was biting, not like every moment, but there was issues we had with that to deal with. She's been pulling her hair out. She started kind of doing that again. Major fits, like where you take something away and she couldn't handle it, fell apart. And they were working at school on that too. So thank God that's what helped me as well, a great team where she's going to school. So I think, you have to have that connection, and
absolutely.
That's why I go as much as I can. I'm very involved, and I'm her biggest advocate, so have to be.
Well, that is. And we're looking at some pictures of her and of you, and she's absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
Such a beautiful young girl. And I love what you're saying, Jill, because it brings home to those people who are watching that you started by saying you've had so much progress, and your daughter is talking, and that how wonderful that is. But it doesn't mean that you're done. And it doesn't mean that she's done and she's making progress, and that doesn't mean, we'll see a diminishment in duration of tantrums and how often they happen, but it doesn't mean they go away, because our kids are still kids and kids still tantrum. And there's that thing that we talk about on this all the time on the show about you take 2 steps forward and every once in a while you take 1 step back.
Exactly.
But I hope that and that our viewers know that even when you take that step back, you never go back to square one, and you just keep on moving forward, and you'll always get further. But it's not easy.
Every day is a challenge, and it's rewarding, but it has, you don't know what to expect, but it's the skills learning, and that's why I know how important it is. That helps me, and to help my husband and help Zoe, all this, you know, we have to be there for her. So
yeah, and to have that support of the people at school, so wonderful. And even what you described with your husband, you know, it's very common. We have a friend who likes to say that for autism there has to be a project manager, and a lot of times it's the wife. Yeah, I was the project manager too. And your husband comes home and he's exhausted from work, and you're like, all right, I got to bring you up to speed. And you know, they do their level best, whoever is not the project manager, but and it's hard, I think, on both sides, but I have nothing but respect for what you're doing, and you're showing up for your child, you're getting it done. It's a long haul, it's a marathon. Are you taking care of yourself?
I am taking very good care of myself. I go to the gym when I can. Luckily, I'm able to do that. I mean, even the summertime is so nice, and, you know, can't go to a gym, I would say to anyone, you just take a walk and just appreciate, you know, the sunshine, and you'll feel better. But, you know, it's easy also just, and there's been days, in addition to finding out that Zoe was autistic, my mom had passed away, which was a year, February, and it was like my head was spinning, and I didn't know which way to turn, and my mother was my best friend, so that was very hard. Every day is really hard. Thank God she was able to be there when I gave birth to Zoe. She was there, and she was so in love with her, and, you know, it's what it is now. But, you know, that's the most important thing. Take care of yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's days I just want to crawl up in under my covers, and I'm sure you understand that too. But, you know, I got to be strong for myself and for my daughter and husband. So.
Absolutely. And, you know, we all have those days. We're entitled to them. Those days when you're on the kitchen floor, man, and it's tough getting up.
Another thing, if I could just add,
sure.
that I started to do, because I always have, like, my vision board and dreams, and I would say this to anyone who has life experiences. I've started to put together something because I would like to put a book out or something to help other parents, like the experiences that I'm going through. So I've kind of been, you know, putting some things together, and maybe it'll happen. But I think, you know, just to put your thoughts and put a diary or whatever it is, that's also therapeutic and is helpful.
I agree. I think that that's wonderful, and keep us posted when you have it together. You know, we just featured last month the fabulous Sean Colton, an autism dad, and he wanted to write a children's book. And what he did was he put it on Kickstarter and said, here's what I want to do, and I'm going to need $5,000 to do it. And you might want to check out his page on Kickstarter, but he raised more than $6,000 so that he is writing the book right now and getting it done.
Wow, thank you. Okay.
So check that out. You know, I mean, there's all kinds of, and when you put it out there and say, I want to take my experience and help somebody else, it's just amazing what that can lead to. So, you know, and I think a lot of us, it is a measure of how well your child is doing when you start to think, okay, how can I help other people? And we had Nancy Allspaw Jackson on the show yesterday, and she does an entire speech about parents and how it redefines you, and sometimes you find a new career, sometimes you find a new passion, and that was certainly the case for her. It was certainly the case for me. If somebody had told me 7 years ago I'd be sitting here hosting a show about autism, I would have assured them that they were nuts. Wow. But I'm having a ball.
Yeah, you never know.
You never know. You never know. But keep us posted about that, because as you start to get the book done, we'd like to hear more about it.
Thank you. I will. Now it'll give me more ambition.
There you go. Because people could use being able to hear about your story. We all need that sometimes. But I applaud you, because you're getting it done, and I wish you nothing but the best. Please give all of our love to Zoe. Give her a big hug from us here at Autism Live.
I will. Thank you.
And thank you for this great idea that we're now going to have as a regular feature.
Because it's only going to help other parents that need that. Because it's like, you don't know, and I'm still learning, as we all are, but if you don't know where to go, get that insight. So
absolutely.
That's really great.
So important to hear other people's experiences along the way. So congratulations for how well she's doing. We look forward to even more progress as she has over the years. All right. Have a lovely day. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye, Jill.
Take care. Bye-bye.
So that was the wonderful Jill Kravitz. She wrote in, had a great idea, and said, do you ever feature children? My child's doing so well. You know, it took some work, but we're getting it done. And I think it's a great idea. So this is, she's our superstar. I can't even talk anymore. Our superstar kid, Zoe, and you can see this lovely picture of her there. What a wonderful, wonderful story that this family has. We're going to take a break and come back, and it's time for our generalization tip of the week, so stick with us.
When the Center for Autism at University of Houston clearly got established in 2008, all of our programs are pretty much geared toward younger children, but shortly after we opened our doors, I started getting contacted by parents of children who were older and parents of adults wanting to know what services were available for them. And so I started looking into it, realized that there had been very little research conducted with adults, particularly adults who are considered high functioning, adults who have no intellectual disabilities, and yet they have problems. And one of the biggest ones that I found when I did the research was in obtaining and maintaining employment. In fact, the majority of them are unemployed, which I found really surprising, considering they had no intellectual disabilities and were quite capable of doing all kinds of important things for our society. And then, so that kind of caught my interest. And then it's hard to say exactly how I put it together, but we have a clinic on campus where we provide early intervention services to young children with autism. And I started thinking about some potential vocational training programs for individuals who were high functioning. And I just started thinking about how we provide very structured training. So when we're teaching someone to work with a young child with autism, we provide very structured training, immediate feedback, and many of the procedures that we're teaching them to use with young children are pretty invariant, very scripted. And from what I was hearing, research, there's been some studies where they interviewed people, adults with high-functioning autism, about employment and why they had trouble at their prior jobs. And a lot of it had to do with inadequate feedback, inadequate training, intolerant coworkers. And I started thinking about the way behavior analysts typically train their therapists. So what I decided to do is do a pilot study. And initially, it was just going to be all in role play. So they weren't going to actually work with any young children. But I had never worked with this population. I'd never worked with adults with high-functioning autism, so I didn't know what to expect. And it was just amazing. They picked it up so quickly that we quickly added a phase 2 to the pilot study and had them actually work with a young child too. Initially, they learned the components of discrete trial teaching, and they did that in role play, and we had them work with a young child, teaching them a similar skill, and we showed not only did their skills generalize to the young child, but we showed acquisition of the young child in that skill too. One thing we also did, it's one thing to, come up with objective definitions of correct use of procedures we're teaching, but there might be some qualitative aspects to teaching that aren't captured by our system. And so in addition to taking data on their behavior in terms of what they were doing when they were teaching, we also showed video clips of them teaching to 3 experts in behavior analysis. We didn't tell them anything other than we would like you to rate this. This is a newly trained person, and we had them use a rating scale and rate how effective they thought they were, how likely they would hire them, and we had them rate our participants as well as an undergraduate student who had no developmental no disability, but had never. It was a novice, and we just trained her to do the same thing. We put her through the same training. We also had them rate one of our graduate students in behavior analysis. And what we found was the experts gave similar ratings to the undergraduate student and the graduate student, but lower ratings to participants, even though the accuracy was the same. They were just as accurate as our undergraduate student and graduate student. So clearly there were some qualitative aspects of their maybe voice, the tone of their voice, amount of eye contact, things like that. And so I think that that would be something to work on next, is looking at that and coming up with ways to teach that as well. We're interested in expanding the teaching to other ABA methodologies. And I'd also like to look at other vocations as well, and just looking at vocational skills and the types of skills needed to be successful on the job.
Welcome back. That was Dorothea Lerman, and we got a chance to talk with her when we were at ABAI, ABA International in Seattle at the very end of May. And I'm so glad that we have the opportunity to start showing you these interviews, because it was so exciting, you guys. It was so wonderful to be there and see how many people are so passionate. And, you know, I don't necessarily know who the who's who in ABA is, but anytime that I said to somebody, you know, I had an opportunity to talk to Dorothea Lerman, and they were like, you did, that she is somebody who is very revered in the field, is quite the expert. And there were so many things I could have talked to her about. Can I just tell you? And it was really hard to pick what we wanted to talk about, but she was delivering a paper while we were there on this project that she had done, which I just thought was fascinating. This entire idea of taking high-functioning kids that are on the spectrum and seeing, can we train them to be really effective therapists, ABA therapists, to work with kids on the spectrum. And, you know, I mean, obviously, if you watch the interview, they got some things, some kinks that they have to work out, but it's exciting. And I think that they're going to find exactly the way in which this works, which is, I don't know. It just gives me so much hope for so many different things. I have so much that I want to talk about. It's that time of the day when we're supposed to talk about a generalization tip, and I want to give you a generalization tip, but I'm going to keep it short because I want to talk about some of the different things that you guys wrote in for the question of the day, both yesterday and today. So, I got different things up on my Facebook here. But in any case, generalization, what is it? Generalization is when a child learns a skill, is able to do a skill that wasn't specifically taught. You know, we talked yesterday about DTT and almost like creating like a bubble where we're, excuse me, teaching a specific skill. But we want, at some point, for the child to be able to take this kernel of a lesson that we've taught and to be able to apply it in all kinds of circumstances, and be able to apply it in circumstances that have never even come up in discussion or in a lesson, and they can apply what they've learned in these creative, fluid ways so that the skill really is theirs. We taught it in this very bubble environment. We taught it in their natural environment, and now they're able to do it no matter where it happens, no matter when it happens, no matter who they're with, no matter what's going on. How exciting is that? Generalization is the thing that we always, always, always want to get to. It is what needs to be uppermost on our minds, and when we sit down to start teaching any lesson, we need to think about how we want this to generalize. You know that thing about when you fail to plan, you plan to fail? Well, what we see sometimes is that people fail to plan for generalization. Now, if you guys ask me all the time, how do I know if my ABA provider is really good? Well, this is one of the ways that you can tell, because if they're not planning for generalization and you don't hear that word, if you've been in ABA for a year and you've been going to clinics and you have not heard the word of generalization, I'm the warning sign, warning, Will Robinson, you need to go and ask, and maybe they're just not using the term around you because they like to be jargon, less jargon intensive with their parents, maybe. But ask. You know, next time you go to clinic, next time you're talking to the therapist, say, how are we planning for generalization with this lesson? And there should be an immediate answer. And if there isn't, major red flags, right? What we want to make sure is that as we're teaching the lesson, we're teaching it across locations, times, people, and stimuli. So I always like to use the example with you guys about toilet training. You start to toilet train your child, because this is the one that we all know, and this is where when generalization doesn't happen, it really bites you. You go, I thought we got this great thing, and now we have a new problem. So imagine you're teaching a child toilet training, and you have great success, and the child is able to pee in the potty, they're able to poop in the potty, woohoo, this is fabulous. And then you go back to living your life, and you find yourself at Kmart one day, and the child says, I have to go to the bathroom, and you take the child in, and the child refuses and says, you know, no, because they won't pee or poop on the potty at Kmart. And then you go on the trip, you know, to your cousin's wedding, and you get there and you've got a child who will not poop for 4 days because they're away from the toilet at home. Because in the beginning, we didn't plan for generalization. Now, forgive yourself because you didn't know before, but I'm going to tell you right now so you never make this mistake again, right? We didn't plan for generalization. We didn't plan for the child to be able to poop on any potty at any time, no matter what's going on, right? We need for the child, heaven forbid, we lose the power in a storm in the summer and the lights are out, they need to be able to poop on the potty in the dark. They need to poop whether grandma's taking them to the toilet or dad is taking them to the toilet. They need to be able to poop here, there, and everywhere. It sounds like a Dr. Seuss book, doesn't it? But, you know, we really don't have the skill of toileting completely until we're able, yeah, you may not like having to use a restroom in other places, but you can still do it, right? I'm not a great flyer, and it's my least favorite thing to go to a restroom on a plane, but you know what? If I have to, I can, right? And we want that skill for our children. Think about that for every skill that you teach. You want that skill to have legs, to create new things that your child can do. So we have to plan for it from the beginning. If we appropriately plan for generalization with toileting, we're going to start toileting, you know, let's say you have 2 bathrooms in your home and you start in the downstairs bathroom, and that's where you reinforce the child for going to the bathroom. But once they start to get it, then you take them upstairs. But we don't wait 6 months, right? We don't wait 6 days. We take them upstairs and we do it on the upstairs potty. Woo! Big reinforcement. So now the child is learning as they go along, right? This skill happens in different toilets. And then fairly quickly, you're going to take them to somebody else's house that you really trust is going to let you set up for 4 hours, because it may take that the first time. But again, we're not waiting 6 weeks to start toilet training on somebody else's toilet. You say to your sister-in-law, I need to come over and I need to set up camp for 6 hours because I want my child to see that we still do this in other people's houses too. Big reinforcement, right? And then maybe, you know, when you see that then you go to grandma's house and then it's time to go to the public toilet. We don't want to put those things off. And make it possible for our children to be able to use this skill in all settings. It doesn't matter what we teach. If you're teaching the color red that we were talking about before, think of how many color reds there are, right? There's light red, there's dark red, there's brick red, there's orange red, right? We want for our children to be able to understand the concept of red in all of the different shapes and forms and shades that it comes in. And we want the child to be able to do it whether they're sitting at home and it's quiet, or whether they're at school and there's 35 kids walking around them and the teacher says, what color is this? We want them to be able to fully understand red in all those contexts, no matter whether it's a 2D representation of red or it's a 3D representation of red. So we plan for that and we vary things fairly quickly. Yep, when we start with that DTT bubble where we're teaching it, right? We're being consistent with our consequences, but as we see the child starting to get it, we're going to change things up. And we're going to make sure, this is one of the reasons why I always tell you, you got to have a team. If there's one therapist, then what's going to happen is the child's going to learn how to do it with that one therapist. And then the woman, you know, so the therapist teaches, you know, how do you answer the question, what's your name? And the child, so the therapist says, what's your name? And the child says, Billy, yay, reinforcement. And, you know, he's got it. Fabulous. He can do it 100% of the time. Woohoo. And then you go to the grocery store and the grocery store clerk leans over and says, honey child, what's your name? And the child has no idea how to respond. Well, that's not generalization. We need to make sure that we're giving them opportunity to get these lessons from different people at different times, in different settings, with different stimuli, different things that they're reacting to. So that's generalization. Make sure that that word is being used. And if you're working on skills at home, you're doing this, get your plan together. When you're writing up, you know, and it will tell you in skills, here's your plan for how you generalize. Here's how you want to make sure that you include generalization, but put it at the forefront. We're out of time, and I want to bring Angela Persicke in here, but we also have these questions of the day. We may have to get to those tomorrow, or we may do it at the end of the hour. But let's take a break. Stick with us. We're going to be back with Angela Persicke. She is BCBA. We're going to be talking about why we take data, what the data does for us and how we look at the data and change what we're doing to be more effective. But I know one of you already had written in the question. We're going to ask her that question. If others of you have more questions, now's a great time. If you're watching us on autism-live.com, then, and it says Shannon is answering ... that means that box is active. You can type your question in right now. It shows up here magically on my screen, and we can be asking Angela your questions. So stick with us. Back in a couple of minutes with Angela Persicke.
Skills is a revolutionary web-based program that incorporates comprehensive assessment, curriculum design, progress tracking, and treatment evaluation for children with autism all in one place. Developed by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. Our approach is based on over 40 years of research on the principles of learning and their application to improving the lives of children with autism. How does Skills work? Created with speed and simplicity in mind, Skills was modeled on an easy step process. Step 1. Start assessment. Step 1 begins with our intelligent assessment system, which consists of a series of questions. This assessment is essential to identifying your child's level of skills compared to their typical peers across all areas of development. This includes assessing social, motor, language, adaptive, play, cognition, executive functions, and academic skills. Every skill has an assigned age which indicates when the skill emerges during typical development. This means that each child is automatically presented only with lessons that are relevant to his or her age. Step 2. Choosing activities. It's now easier than ever to build an individualized treatment plan. In Step 2, you are presented with an individualized pool of activities that are directly linked to your student's assessment results. Each activity represents a specific skill that has been indicated by the assessment as needing to be taught. Activities are categorized by curriculum and then by lesson. There are 3 main types of skills: building blocks, fundamental, and expansion skills. Fundamental skills are necessary for successful everyday functioning. Building blocks are prerequisites to a fundamental skill. Expansion skills are non-essential skills, but may provide further enrichment in certain areas. After reviewing the activities available to you, you can quickly add your chosen activities to the treatment plan by simply checking the box and clicking the button. Step 3. Start treatment. Once you have selected and added the activities you want, you are ready to begin teaching. Skills provides you with all the tools necessary to design and manage an effective curriculum plan, such as printable activity guides that are customizable by the teacher, supplemental teaching aids including printable data sheets, teaching guides, visual aids, worksheets, and tracking forms, detailed IEP goals and benchmarks for each activity, brief and visually appealing video tutorials, a variety of treatment progress and clinical timeline charts, and lots more. And since Skills is completely web-based, everything you need is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in one easy-to-access location. Skills users even benefit from unlimited access to a support community, where they can ask questions and share ideas with a skills expert. Skills is always with you.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters. And as promised, we have brought Angela Persicke back into the studio. This is that time of week when she is normally here with us. Glad to have you back. We didn't have you last week because sometimes things happen and you had to be elsewhere. But we're thrilled to have her back this week. And I had specifically asked for you, you said, what kinds of things do we usually have a conversation during the week about what kinds of things. And I said, well, you know what I really want to talk about? And this is weird for me that I want to talk about this, but I said, I want to know more about the data and the kinds of decisions that you guys make based on the data. And I loved your response. And you got very excited, and she was like, I love to talk about the data.
I love talking about data, so
which I
I'm
just
very
totally
excited
don't
about
get.
this.
But I am excited to talk about it because it makes a difference in the kinds of things we do. And I always talk about how we want to be more effective, more efficient, and the data drives that. And I also want to disclose and be honest here that as a parent, this is the area where I go, I really don't have to take data, do I? Right? And I tend to be that person on the team that is not taking the good data. I'm all about feeling it in the moment and seeing how, but I know how important it is to take the data.
And yes, it is a little effortful, especially for a parent that has everything in the world on your mind, and you don't necessarily want to take a pen and paper everywhere with you and take data. It's understandable.
But no matter how you're getting ABA, how it's being delivered, whether you're having a full program in your home or whether you're leading your program yourself, at some point as a parent, you are going to need to or be asked to take data, and it's going to be important. And I want to talk about why it's important and the kinds of things that it does. But we had a question that came in yesterday and that I promised that we would get to in this hour, so I'm just going to put it up on the screen, and there were some lovely compliments in the beginning that I read earlier, but I'm not going to go back over those as much as I enjoy them, and thank you for writing them. It's good to know that we're being useful and helpful here, but I want to get to the question. Somebody wrote in and said, my question is about my 10-year-old son who can't give up Baby Einstein. How much longer can I take him wanting to draw the characters? I've used it as a deprivation tool, but at this point with him going into the 3rd grade, I'm pulling my hair out, I skipped a line here. This thing is not as, but anyway, how do I get him out of this phase is the question. Please help me. This has gone on too long, and thank you. And now I want to say, first of all, before I turn this over to you, that it's so important that I remind you guys that we don't give and never want it to be misconstrued to be child-specific advice, and there's a really good reason for that. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here, that so often people just give you this carte blanche, well, this is one size fits all, hoo-ha, that we don't appreciate. Right? Because our kids are unique, and in the field of ABA, we like to be specific and have it be child specific, which you can't do based on a couple of lines of dialogue that we exchange in this medium. So we're never giving child specific advice, and we don't want you to misunderstand why, because it would be, I think, an insult to your child, and we would never want to do that. However, there are some things that we can talk about, and I asked Angela to come in and talk about, because so many of you write in and say that your child is interested in something that they were interested in a long time ago and that worked really well at one point, even as a reinforcer, but now it's not age appropriate, and it gets to that point where it gets uncomfortable and can even be something that's holding them back from socially interacting with peers. And it's hard, it's emotional, because I think for us it's like the pacifier thing. Well, but my kid likes it, and we've worked so long on reinforcing them, and they find this, and I'm going to take away a reinforcer. How do I do that? So can we talk about just some generalities of when we want to make something less reinforcing? What do we do? Do we focus on other things? Tell us.
Yes, that is the key. If you're going to, this is obviously very reinforcing for the child. Any child that has a specific toy, and at first you love that they're playing with toys that are appropriate and that their peers are into as well. But what you have to do is make it so what is age appropriate is equally as reinforcing as the Baby Einstein or Thomas the
the train.
Yeah, Thomas the Tank. Yeah.
Anything like that, you have to make it as reinforcing, and that may be difficult. But if you find something similar with a similar type of music, and there are cartoons, a lot of cartoons out there. I think Baby Einstein. There's like a one above it for a little bit.
Yeah,
older
I think there is
children.
an older version of Baby Einstein.
Yeah, that just moves it into a more age-appropriate level. So that's really the key to make whatever it is that you want your child to get into be as reinforcing as what he is into right now.
Now, I would imagine that cold turkeying it, not the most beneficial thing.
Yes, I mean, I could just see that turning into tantrums and a lot of problems for the parent, but limiting it. So you can play with this, or you can watch this, but only at this time.
Right.
Or you have to do this first, and then you can watch this.
Right. And in the meantime, be shoring up other things that are reinforcing that are more. I think it's so interesting because if we think about ourselves, you know, and there are some things that we're really into, and if you think about what you were into when you were 18 versus what you're into now, at whatever age that you're at, and how did that happen? And it's because other things got more interesting to you. And this becomes sort of the Sherlock Holmes thing for a parent of figuring out, okay, how am I going to? But, you know, my son loves video games, and right now they're age appropriate for him. But, you know, let's face it, there are a lot of men and things that are not age appropriate for them. Honey, I did not say that. My husband does voiceovers for video games, so he's a little too into video games. I didn't say that. But anyway.
But again, that's age appropriate.
For my husband and for his business, it is age appropriate. But in any case, you know, I know that with my husband and my son, if I gave them a choice, a preference choice, and said, would you guys like to sit here and play video games until your face falls off or do dishes, right? We know what the answer is going to be.
Of course.
But if I said to my son, okay, you can sit here and play video games all day long, or we could go to Disneyland, he would be, you know, packing the bag to go to Disneyland. So there are some things, now I can't go to Disneyland every day, but, you know, there are things that we can build in over time that are, and I love this idea of looking for something that is along the same lines, but more age appropriate. Even if it's, you know, even if it's Baby Einstein that the child is into and we're moving to, you know, toddler Einstein, that's still progress.
Yes, exactly.
And that we can eventually get to the point where, but there've got to be other things that are out there in the world that have the same kind of concept as Baby Einstein, but older versions. I mean, I would look on PBS because that's where you're going to see, you know, some of those kinds of things.
And also, you want to make sure that whatever it is not interfering with the child's functioning and the child's life. So if, you know, your child wants to watch Baby Einstein every single night before he or she goes to sleep, okay, you know, that's not interfering, obviously, with his or her life. But finding something equally reinforcing.
Right. But if it's a thing where the play date is coming over to play and the child's not wanting to interact with the other child because of Baby Einstein, then we've got a problem. You know, again, if it's an interaction thing, because I'm just thinking about another parent who wrote in a while ago and said, you know, Thomas the Tank, that's all my child wants for Christmas, and it's not appropriate anymore, and kids come over and want to play, and he wants to play Thomas the Tank. And, you know, and we had a conversation about, you know, maybe it's time to try some other trains.
Yeah, model trains.
You know, or even, you know, there are other kinds of trains besides Thomas that are still for younger kids, and, you know, gradually be smart about it. But make whatever the other thing is really reinforcing to start with. Love that. And go slow, I think.
Very slow.
All right. And we also had somebody write in, a mom from India, who said that she's so enjoying and that the topics really matter to her, and I thank you for that, because we always love it when you guys tell us that something's working for you. Can't underestimate how important that is. That's our reinforcement. So thank you for writing that in. Okay, so Angela, let's take on the data.
All right.
I know, I like talking to you in your wheelhouse here. You love the data. You see her eyes light up. You say data, and she's like, yeah. It's like right up there with saying shoes.
It exactly is. And, you know, everything in my life I take data on as well. So it's
really?
I do.
Like what?
when I'm trying to cut back on caffeine.
Really? You take data on? Because it's that reinforcing for you.
It's that reinforcing, and you know what? This is generally for everyone looking at data. You see exactly what is happening and the patterns of behavior, and you know, you can say, oh yeah, I'm cutting back on caffeine, it's fine, but you don't really know exactly how many things you ate or drank that had caffeine in it. But if you're taking data on it, you're like, okay, yes, I had 10 cups of coffee today or whatever.
Well, you know what I find interesting about the data is that when you do take data on things, sometimes there's some things that are shocking, things that you didn't realize. And we all know, we've all had that friend who says, oh, you know, I've cut my calories back, and you're watching them, you know, sneak things in, and you're going, that's not really realistic.
Yeah.
You're really charting this? It's not really realistic.
Exactly.
So interesting for ourselves and for our kids. I know I certainly have been in the circumstance where I've said, oh, you know, I think that he's not getting better, that, you know, that he's not getting this skill, I'm frustrated, or I say, oh, I think he's got that. And our supervisor, Sabrina Toom, a wonderful woman, would take out the book and go, well, here's what the data shows.
Exactly.
And I go, really? That's what, it doesn't feel that way to me. So very interesting that I always believe in a parent's gut, but sometimes we're not entirely accurate because it's emotional.
Yes. And sometimes the data will show small incremental improvements that you can't see necessarily. Like, you don't see that the child is having a full conversation with you, but we are tracking so many smaller steps, and we can show you, well, yesterday he was only getting 50% accuracy on this, and today it's at 70% accuracy.
Which is progress.
It's very good progress, exactly. And one of the things, though, you want to watch for is that if the data aren't showing anything, you know, if after a couple weeks you're not seeing any improvements, you want to change something.
Right.
And that's really what we look for. We want to see, is our intervention working?
Right.
And that's exactly why we have to track the data, because, you know, especially for a parent, for behavior problems, like if you're implementing something, it seems really difficult for the first couple weeks. Like, oh, he's getting worse, maybe the extinction burst, like, it has come on, and it's just seems so difficult and nothing's changing. But if you look at the data, you say, like, yes, it has gotten better. He had 5 tantrums yesterday, but today he had 4.
Right, and that is improvement. But as you said, sometimes you look at the data and nothing is happening, and then it's time to change something.
Exactly.
But what's interesting to me is that I think a lot of times as parents, we want to change everything. We want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, and what I learned over the years is that it's like Priceline. Do you know how when you're putting something in a Priceline and you put in an offer on something and you say, well, I'm flying on this day, I want to stay this long, and this is the price that I'm willing to pay, and Priceline sends it back and says, it's not happening, you got to change one thing. And then you have to go in and change just one thing. Not everything, but you have to change one. Maybe you want to change the area of the hotels. It's like a Priceline ad right now. You want to change the area that the hotels are in, but it's like that. Only change one thing. You don't go in and change everything. You change one thing. And you stop and think for a moment, okay, you know, what needs to be changed for this bid to work on Priceline? And that's what we want to do with our kids, is think for a minute, think, okay, so what does the data show here? What's the 1 or 2 things at the most that we want to change? So talk to us a little bit about when you look at data and some examples of different things that data shows you that you go, oh, this is what we would want to change in this instance. And
Well, specifically for behavior problems, if you're tracking it over, you know, a week or 2, and you see that there are spikes, so there are increases in behaviors, certain days, certain therapists, even, you know, when there was an outing or something, we definitely want to look at those things. So everything around why there are spikes in the data, or increases or decreases. So we really focus on the environmental factors as well. And just looking at the data, we can see a pattern of behavior, but that's not where we stop. We're like, okay, this is the pattern. but why is that happening?
Right. So kind of like a function, looking for the function of. So if you see that every Tuesday afternoon at 4 o'clock you're getting a tantrum, there's something consistent there.
Exactly.
And you got to look at what is the consistent thing there, because it might be something. It might be an antecedent. It might be a consequence. It might be something happening before the behavior or something happening after the behavior, and you would want to change that thing. You'd want to manipulate that, or it could be a person.
Yep.
Could be, you know, that's what's happening, and which is fascinating.
It is.
I think, and it's not always negative.
No, no.
You know, so you know, you never want to assume, but you start asking a series of questions based on what the data has shown you.
Also, you were talking about generalization earlier, and sometimes you see that children work really well with one specific person, and that therapist is saying, well, I don't understand, you know, he's doing so well with me, but not with everyone else, and that might be a lack of generalization.
Right.
And so you can see that in the data, because when that person is there, skill acquisition percentages are very high.
Yeah.
Behaviors are very low.
Right. And so very interesting to see all of those different factors. You know, and we've talked before about mastery, and we'll talk about more, but you know, a lot of times we set mastery criteria, and you can see when you look at the data, we saw this several times with Jem, that you know, he would have it with one therapist, next therapist comes in, so he would just be missing mastery. And so it was always fascinating to me to see the team sit down and see if they could unravel the sweater and figure out why. And ask the therapist that it wasn't happening with, run the lesson right here in front of us so we can see. And sometimes it was just like the smallest little thing that needed to be tweaked, and the child could get it. And so worthwhile, so important for our kids that we find the stumbling blocks. And it's there in the data a lot of the times to point the direction of here's where we need to look next.
Exactly. It just indicates to us where there is a change that needs to be made.
Yeah. All right, we're going to take a little bit of a break. We're going to come back, and I'm going to talk to you about you know, we've had a little discussion about this with somebody else before, about when you see, for instance, the child always gets the first trial wrong, but then gets the rest of them, and the what that kind of shows us. So stick with us. We're going to be back more with Angela Persicke after these messages. You were just part of a presentation, and there was one thing in particular that I was interested in hearing about, theory of mind.
It's about having thoughts about other people's thoughts. Can you understand their perspective? And they've developed a behaviour analytic protocol, because the theory of mind literature is interesting and it comes from a developmental perspective, but it's really just that those skills develop and they're there. So now we're like, well, what do we do when they're not there? How do we train them? They found that they can train it to typically developing kids. They found that when they do train it to typically developing kids, it does shift theory scores. So what my student Dina and I did for her master's thesis was we wanted to look at, can we train it in children with autism? Can we train them to pass this protocol of a number of statements and questions related to the perspective of the speaker? And when we do that, does it change their theory of mind? And what we found is that actually could train it in them. We could train these skills, but that it didn't actually shift their theory of mind scores. So it seems like there may be some other skills in that we might need to teach between these sorts of relations and the more global theory of mind type of skills. And also that the way we have to do with a lot of our behavioural interventions, we really will have to break it down even further for kids with autism and very deliberately program for generalisation.
To know that you guys are working on it lets me sleep at night.
It's really nice to hear those comments from parents, because that's kind of what also drives us.
Welcome back. And so the wonderful Marianne Jackson, who we had an opportunity to talk with in a hallway, literally, grabbed her in a hallway at ABAI, and she's somebody who you're very familiar with.
Yes, she was my advisor at one of my professors in my master's program at California State University, Fresno.
And in fact, you were one of the people, she was on my list of people that I was trying to get, and you would kind of look through my list and you were like, absolutely, make sure you interview her, she's wonderful. And she was, and I said there at the end, when poor Angela didn't get to hear the sound on the interview, but at the end we were talking about the research that they were doing about solving theory of mind and how to teach child theory of mind and to achieve generalization with that. And I said to her, I said, you know, the fact that you're working on something like this and that people of your level are working on this allows me to sleep at night. As a parent, I mean, it literally does, because for years, can I tell you, I walked the floor around the bed because I was going, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? do. And when I know that you guys are working on it, I go, okay, somebody else has this under control. I can take a snooze.
Exactly.
It's a
That's why we're
thing.
here.
Well, it's a wonderful thing, and I can't thank you all enough. And I want to remind everybody at home, because there was a period of time when I just didn't have access to as many BCBAs as I do now, and so I didn't know.
Yeah.
I still am learning. When we went to ABAI, I went, really? There are this many of you? And I'm sure that there were people who weren't there. You know what I mean? And I go, this is crazy. This is wonderful. There are this many people working on it. Fabulous. I'm going to go home and take a nap. So I'm always learning, and I figure if I don't know, then you guys at home don't know how many people are working to find the answers passionately. They get excited and their eyes light up when you say data. I don't get it, but it's okay. It's good. Okay, so let's go back to talking about the data. And for instance, when we see a child and we see on the data, we see some different consistencies, one of them being that, let's say you start doing trials with a child and you're doing trials of 10, and we talked about DTT yesterday. So you're just giving them 10 really succinct opportunities, and you keep seeing that the child's getting the first one wrong or the first two wrong, but then they get the rest of them right. What kinds of things does that tell you as a person looking at the data? And maybe not in all circumstances, but what kinds of questions come to mind when you see something like that?
Yes, I've seen it very often, actually, especially with our younger kids that we are just working on discrete trial training with. You know, we haven't moved into naturalistic environment training. So what I notice with that is that they may not know the skill. They may not have it yet, and it's almost like if I asked you a question, you didn't know it, then I gave you feedback, corrected you, and then asked you 10 more times.
Right.
You know, the feedback may have prompted the remaining responses, and especially if you're doing that, just sitting, giving those 10 trials. That may be the case, that the skill isn't actually learned yet, you know.
It's more like they're using the short-term memory, because they did the first two and you did corrections for them, and then they went, oh, okay, what you want me to do is this, so they did it in the moment, but that doesn't mean that they have it.
Exactly, and in that case, you may want to spread out the trials throughout the whole session. You know, a session maybe an hour or two. If you're just working with your child at home, if you're a parent, throughout the day, ask them once, you know, give them that feedback, maybe ask them again, but then wait. Wait a while. Then ask them again later. And that will really indicate if the child knows or not. And of course, asking them the next day. And if you're just looking at 10 trials and the child misses the first one, but then gets the rest right, that's 90% correct. And a lot of times that's mastery.
It would seem to you like, oh, well, they're at 90%, so they have it, and yet in reality, the child doesn't. Because they learned that short-term memory from the first one and were able to do it, but it hasn't moved into long-term memory. They don't, I always say with mastery, it's that by George, I think they've got it. And in actuality, in this case, it looks like on paper that they have it, but they don't. And so important that we're actually teaching, not just saying, okay, well, they can do it 90% of the time, but they're actually getting the skill.
And in a lot of our skill acquisition studies that we do, so teaching a specific skill, we look at first trial data in addition to total trials. And that shows us if it's generalized, actually, especially if we're working on a skill that isn't just identifying one specific color or name, a label, but a generalized skill. So, you know, no matter what the target is, the child responds similarly. So, for example, right now we're working on teaching children to attend to socially important stimuli. So if someone says, ouch, they look towards the person and say, what is it? But they can't only do that when the person says, ouch. It might be, oh, or look at that. Or wow, or anything like that, or a gasp, or they're coughing. You want the child to look and see what's wrong and be interested in what is going on with that person. So we're working on that right now, and we're looking at the first novel trials. So in a session, we introduce new exemplars, and we see okay, are they getting it when we introduce something new?
Right.
Has it generalized? And in our graphs, you'll see the training trials may be high, 80% or above for total trials, but for the new ones, it's a little bit more of a learning curve.
Right, right. So it just takes a little more time, but that doesn't mean you give up on it.
No, no.
You just give them more opportunities, and you know, again, that back to that price line thing, change one thing, but that you're not just leaving the status quo.
Exactly.
You know, I always talk about the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result. You know, so you do have to tweak something at some point, but not the whole thing.
And you'll see this sometimes when you're starting out, and sometimes with agencies that aren't as in tune to using generalization and programming to generalization. Sometimes you'll see this where they just do a lot of discrete trial training over and over. That the children, it's like they're programmed to answer that specific way, and even down to how are you? And they say, I'm fine. Every single time.
Which is frightening to me. And we know that with the advent, the great thing that we have insurance reform and more people have access to insurance, it means that some people are, you know, there's some great ABA providers out there, great ABA providers, but there are going to be some people who are not as knowledgeable and not as interested in doing the best possible job. I wish that weren't the case. But I think it's going to become more important now for parents to be able to discern the difference between am I getting quality ABA? And that's one of the big things.
That's huge. Generalization. You want to make sure they're programming for generalization. You want to make sure they're taking data. If they're not taking data, they can't accurately show that the child is learning anything.
And I think with insurance that everybody's going to be forced to take data. So even if there was somebody who was out there who wasn't doing it, they're going to have to take data. But here's my next question for you. One of the things that I learned early on is that the data is only as good as the person who takes data the least well on the team. Excuse me. Because it's not everybody, it's not a skill that everybody is as good at. That there are always going to be somebody who's a little less specific, and I do think as a parent you need to know how to take data, and you need to know how to look at the data and have an idea just to be able to recognize, because if you're seeing, and it can go both ways. Let's say that you've got a therapist who comes in and it seems like they're getting 90% across the board and they're doing just a fabulous job, and you see another therapist that maybe the child's at 30%, and you might think, oh, well, the 90% therapist is really the awesome therapist, but it might be that they're taking data in a way that it's making it look like the child's getting it when the child isn't.
Exactly. And a lot of times we'll break skills down and include prompting and saying, okay, with this level of prompting, we'll consider it correct. And if a therapist is including more prompting and not counting that the way that the team decided to count it, they could be saying, oh yeah, this child has this skill, but the child may be prompted. Exactly, and they may be prompt dependent at that point.
Right. So important. And for each lesson, you decide what the correct response is, right? And I always tell you guys, if you've got therapists that are coming, be in the other room with the video monitor and have the sound on. You may not be able to sit and watch every single moment, but you can hear every single moment, and I'll tell you, you will get better. You will understand more because you're constantly hearing it, right? And there were different therapists that would come to my home that I would sit and watch the monitor compulsively because they were so awesome. And I wanted to learn, and I wanted to watch, and I wanted to see my child learn. I would get so excited. From time to time, they'd be out in the room and they'd go, yes, and they'd hear me in the other room going, yeah! Because I couldn't help it. And then there were other times where there were therapists that I thought, I don't know, and I want to be watching to see, what now at CARD, overwhelmingly, we just had rock stars. We just, but it's still, I have to tell you, you gotta watch. And every therapist is not a perfect match for your kid or your family either, and we shouldn't leave that out of the conversation. But watch and see, if you're seeing discrepancies in the data, because it's only as good as the least effective person on the team. And the data, if the data is not correct, I love in CARD learning You know, if you get the opportunity, I hope you guys are all doing Cardi learning, and there's this wonderful voice, this fabulous woman who has a much more soothing voice than I do, and she says, you know, this is how you want to teach the child this, and it's this very, you know, friendly voice, but there are a couple of different times, and one of them where she's talking about taking data and teaching how to take data, and she says, if you're not going to take data, then you are not helping the child, and you should stay home. And you just go, oh, you know, she's going there. She's like, it is not acceptable to not take data. You are not useful to the team. You are not helping the child, and you should stay home. And I loved that as a parent.
I know, it's great.
I just was like, well, that's the truth. Way to lay it out there. Fabulous, very even Buddha voice.
Exactly. And you know, if like sitting in the other room too, you can take data yourself and practice and
compare.
Exactly. And that's what we call inter-observer agreement.
Oh, new jargon.
Exactly. Inter-observer agreement, or IOA, is when two people take data separately and we get a percentage of how accurate they are.
Love that. So what a great way to learn taking data. And if you feel like your ABA provider is not taking data in the way that you want them to be able to judge and say, you know, discrepancy here.
Yeah, and sometimes, you know, a therapist will run trials really quickly in a naturalistic setting, and will think, okay, I'm going to remember this when I go to write it down. And you can't accurately. It's very difficult. A lot of times I would use sticky notes and just like tally. But that's always something to watch out for too. If the therapist is engaged in their session and doesn't have a data sheet, check the accuracy, because it's not always what you remember it to be once you go back and write in the data.
And this is actually a wonderful thing that at some point I got to bring in a bunch of therapists and kind of interview them and talk about, because over the years we saw people take data in so many different ways. And as important it is to take the raw data and then graph it, and people did that in different ways too, that all the therapists who came in, and even if we went on a play date or went someplace, there was always the piece of paper in the pocket, and they'd be marking little hash marks to realize, you know, and doing it in a very discreet way so that everybody in the world, there were times early on when I said, bring the clipboard. I want the data. I don't care if all the other moms at the play park freak out. Bring the clipboard. Later on, we got more discreet about it, and some people are better at the discreet than others, but
well, even one of those clickers, golf clickers, counters, and those are really easy. You just click it. And you can go back and see, like, okay, we ran this many trials. This is how many we got correct. So.
In fact, when we started tracking manding, when my son first started therapy, and you guys know manding, that's when the child requests, and you guys always wanted this insanely high number that I would go, what? How can that possibly be? And they all had golf clickers, that anytime my child asked for something, it was click, 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 click. Because I don't even remember how high it was that they wanted to be per hour. I want to say it was over 100, and I was like, over 100? You want him to ask for over 100 things in an hour? My child who doesn't speak? What? But he got there, you know? And there was no way that they could have been making hash marks and be involved with him and interacting with him. So the golf clicker.
And that's something we don't necessarily think of as well. How many times do we ask for something during the day, even if it's not just asking for something physical, but for information?
Right.
What time is it? That's demanding for information.
Yeah.
So we don't necessarily think of those things just on our own, but of course your therapist, your behavior analyst is going to consider those things, especially when we're teaching children who don't have the skill to acquire it. And teaching words too, when you're first getting your child to speak. Keeping track of how many words they're using a day.
Yes. I can remember, you know, when my child was developing language typically, because there was a period of time in which he was, it was just so cool in the beginning, and he started saying words, and then, you know, and there was a period of time when we were sort of keeping track of, and then it just exploded to a point where, you know, people would say how many vocabulary words are, I don't know, a lot, right? And then, of course, we lost language. He regressed into autism and got to the point where, you know, the words just went away. And I remember at some point saying to somebody, I think the pediatrician said, well, so how many words would you estimate? And I said, well, you know, and I could think of 5 words that he was saying sparingly, but they weren't to communicate. They were just words that he said, and I couldn't think of any words that he used to communicate. And it was fascinating to me. And you know, then as we made the progression and got ABA, and he was adding, you know, there was a period of time where it was 5 words a day, and then it was 15 words a day, and then it was, you know, to the point where I wasn't keeping track anymore. It was that many different words. And then we moved into how many words were in the sentence that he was saying. Was he saying a 2-word sentence? And I remember when we made the leap to 3 words, and then to 4 words and 5 words and 7 words, and the first time that he ever just, you know, put 2 sentences together. So important to be keeping track of, because people will ask you.
And if you're taking data on that, you can say, oh yeah, today he said 3 2-word sentences.
Right.
And then the next day, oh, it's 5 now. And then you can just see, and it's, you know, a lot of us are very visual, and you can see that on the graph. And it's something just during the day, if your child says these things, you don't think back necessarily and count on your hand how many words were in each sentence and what he said. But if you're taking that data, you can see over time, wow, my child's improving.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And eventually, just so you know too, then you keep track of how many back and forth interactions in the conversation. You know, how many times can you go back and forth? And now I'm happy to say we're at the point where I don't keep track of that stuff anymore. We just have conversations.
That's so
it
great.
can get to that point.
Yes.
It absolutely can get to that point. Well, wonderful. What else is there that, like, you guys see typically in data that really drives decisions that you make that are really that we could talk with parents about?
You want to also look for stability. So,
stability? What do you mean by that?
And that means multiple data points in a row around the same level.
Okay.
So around 80%. Because if you have variability, 80% this day, 50% this day, etc., you're not going to end that program. You're not going to stop teaching that skill because obviously it's not learned. Stability is just over time, the child is performing at about the same level.
Okay. So in that case, having it, you know, a flat line, you want to see some stability so that it's not going down.
You want to see stability, and of course for generalization across multiple people, multiple days, different settings, and then you can, at that point we assume, okay, this skill is mastered, we can move on to a different one.
Interesting, because I know as a parent, you know, you like to see the spikes. You like to see things going up, but sometimes the spike, there's, you know, a downward too. So you like to see things go up and stay up.
Yes. Or if it's some type of behavior problem, go down and stay down.
Yes,
because and in that case, that you can see where that's very problematic if it goes down and back up and down and up.
Right.
So
that moves us
stability.
all out. Stability, having it go down and stay down. Although one of the things that we've been talking about today is that it's very common to take 2 steps forward and take 1 step back.
Of course.
It's a scary thing for parents. You know, I drove our supervisor crazy because my child had skills and lost them. It was always my fear that they were the progress that we had was going to go away. And yet, you know, she would assure me on a regular basis, no, we're never going back to that. We're just going to continue to make progress, but there are going to be some times that we're going to take steps back and we'll address that and move on, and it's not the thing to panic. I always think now of pizza dough. I always have to put it in other terms for myself, and how when you're doing a pizza dough and you're pushing it out to the edges, you put your hands up and it kind of shrinks back, but it doesn't shrink back to the original ball, but you keep pushing and eventually it stays out at the edges.
And that's really the importance of maintenance data. And so, you know, once you get reach mastery in a program and you maybe stop that program as the daily target, but we take maintenance probes. So in like a month, we test that skill.
To make sure it doesn't go away.
Exactly. And if we test that skill like a month later and the child's performing now back down to 50%, we have to reintroduce that target.
And that does happen.
It does. It happens all the time, and especially for skills that are important for everyday interaction. So conversation skills, those will keep building on each other, and you will never stop tracking those, because of course that's something you do not want your child to lose conversation skills, and so you continue to track those skills.
But so important that everybody knows, even though that's something that happens on a regular basis, that if you are doing those maintenance drills and kind of checking things, then you just tweak some things, put it back in, and the child gets it again.
Yeah, and you'll often see that if, you know, a month later the child isn't performing at the level he was a month earlier, you can also compare how long it will take him to relearn that skill.
Right.
And you'll be able to see it takes a lot less time the second time around.
Yeah. We just went through this actually with shoe tying because my son, it took him forever to learn shoe tying. We really had some difficulties with it. But eventually he had it, he mastered it and everything. That's great, fabulous. And then of course I, as the card-carrying parent, went and bought him a pair of shoes that had Velcro. Right? And then the next pair of shoes was Velcro. And then suddenly, recently this spring, he wanted a pair of shoes that had ties because they had these bright neon green ties that he wanted. And I said, sure, absolutely, because we should do more shoe tying. And, you know, and thought to myself, yeah, because we haven't done that in a while. And of course, he had lost, he had lost the skill because he hadn't had any opportunity to do it for like 2 years.
Yeah.
So we had to reteach it, and I was very patient with it. I didn't push because I didn't want it to be adversarial because it had gotten to that point with him for a while the first time. But he got it really quickly. He actually did. And now, you know, I imagine that there won't be another time because I, as the parent, won't be buying the Velcro shoes for a couple of years, if ever. You know, so, but yeah.
And that's the case with anybody, with us too. If you know, you don't do something for a few years, you may need some help learning it again.
Right.
And that's just how we learn things. And you can't expect your child who hasn't tied their shoes in 2 years to just go back to it.
Yeah, I don't know what I was thinking. Well-intentioned parent, but not thinking. All right. Well, the time that we have you is up, but I want to thank you so much for coming in and talking to us about data. And hopefully you, like me, will be more motivated to take good data so that you can make informed decisions about what actually is, not what you think it is, not what you feel like it might be, and that you can also check with your provider to make sure that they're taking the best possible data so that your child, we want to be the most efficient, most effective, and we're not going to get there unless we're really taking the data.
Exactly.
And taking it well. And I find it just so fun that you get so excited about taking the data. That's just awesome to me. Okay. So thank you again. We're going to take a short break. We're going to come back, talk about some of your answers to the question of the day, and then it's going to be time to say goodbye, but we'll be back tomorrow. Stick with us. Hi, we're here today with Cecilia Knight, who is the Director of Training for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. And today I'm thrilled to have her here because we're going to talk about manding. What is manding?
A request that you would make of another person.
Why is manding one of the first things that seems to come up in most programs?
Okay. Well, a baby requests for his mother's attention by crying or by reaching. And so it's one of the first ways that you let another person know what you need. And then that other person reinforces you by either picking you up or giving you something to drink or something to eat. And so many of our clients aren't really good at that once we start a program with them. And unfortunately, many of them engage in inappropriate manding. Screaming, kicking, biting. And so what we're trying to do early on is no longer reinforce the inappropriate ways of asking and rather reinforce the appropriate ways of asking. And as we teach them an appropriate way to ask for, Mom, play with me, can I have juice, or, you know, even more simply, help, then we see those inappropriate demands decreasing and the appropriate demands increasing, because the child's wants and their desires aren't really changing, but we're teaching them the right way to get their needs met.
So manding doesn't have to actually be spoken. It can be nonverbal as well.
And that's exactly right. They could exchange an icon. And if I bring you an icon with a cup on it and hand it to you,
and you bring me a juice cup, then we've made an exchange. And so there is what Skinner would call verbal behavior. You have reinforced my request for a cup or for juice.
So when we say verbal behavior, we're not talking about vocal behavior necessarily.
That's right.
It's just that it's a conversation of some sort.
What is reinforcing to the child? The demand is evoked by the child's desire or their need for something. So early on, we may arrange the situation where I know that they're interested in the juice and they're reaching for it. I may hold it back to just say juice or ja or whatever is appropriate for that child. And then as soon as they emit any sort of response, give a high level of praise and then immediately give them the juice. So what controls demand is that specific reinforcer. So of course, if the child asks for a juice cup and you bring something else, then they're not being reinforced with what they asked to have.
Okay.
What do you want?
Wait
Good
for
job.
You say wait for please. Wait for please. Good talking. Thank you, Dad. Thank you, Daddy.
Welcome back to Autism Live, and it's time, that time of the day, wanted to make some time so that we could, and then of course I put it away. Here we go. Where we talk about your answers to the question of the day. Our question of the day today is, what do you wish you could change about yourself? I know, a loaded question, right? But you guys wrote in some really great things. One of the first things that somebody wrote in was the value I place on living. It changes your motivation to better than the day before. What a wonderful thing to say, you know, to really value how important it is to be here, right? Because the truth of the matter is, no matter how bad things are, they could be worse, and we get to be here. We get to be here with our kids, and that is something to be grateful for. Somebody who wrote in and said, getting married like everyone else. I want to remind you that not everybody is married, that I understand that it's only 50% of the population that's married, but I remember when I was not married and thought, oh, I don't know if this is ever going to happen, that it was something, I looked around and it looked like to me everybody was married, but don't give up hope. I got married about 3 weeks before my 40th birthday, you know, and at that point, you know what they say, that a woman in her late 30s is more likely to be taken hostage on a cruise ship than she is to get married. Well, we can beat the odds, can't we? And I'm very happily married. Another person who said they'd like to change their age. Oh dear. Somebody else who says, I wish I could have more patience. Oh, I should have wished for that, huh? Because I should have more patience, but I wished for other things. I wished for more energy. Another person who said, I would like to be a teen again, especially 16, 17, or 18. Oh my goodness, you're a brave person. I would not want to be those ages again. Another person who says, I wish I had infinite patience. Wouldn't that be lovely? And the ability to read minds would be handy as well. Wouldn't that be great? Another person, I wish I had more patience and be better at coping with stress and anxiety. Something we talk about a lot here, because there's some stress and anxiety on this journey. And they said, and yeah, mind reading would be helpful too, wouldn't it? Another person who says, I wish I could see inside my son's head when he's melting down so that I could understand his fear and frustration better. I know he gets frustrated, but I cannot imagine what it looks like and feels like for him. You know, stick around, because when our children get functional communication skills, they start to be able to begin to describe to us what this frustration feels like. And I know right now at 9, my son is very eloquent when he tells me about what it feels like when he's frustrated and upset, and it's a fascinating thing. Another person who says, I wish I could learn how not to be late for everything. Bless your heart. You know what I did for a lot of years? I'm still not good about being on time. Let me say that before I say this suggestion of what I did that drove everyone crazy. I changed all of the clocks in my life to say different things. So there was a clock on the stove that said one thing, and the big, we had a clock that came from my dad that's not a big grandfather clock, but one of those pendulum clocks, and it said another thing. And then my watch at that point, because I still had a watch, said another thing. And of course my phone kept the actual time. And by the way, the time in my car still is set 11 minutes fast. But I drove our therapists insane because they needed to time things and do intervals to see how long something was. And they finally sat me down and said, we need for you to get on some sort of time zone that makes sense to you, because the different clocks in different areas, and my husband said, oh, thank you. Thank you for stepping in. But that was my way of handling being late for things. If I never knew what time it was, I had to prepare earlier. But I will say, and we never got to our executive functions tip this week, but if you really want to be more on time, and I'm better than I was, I'm late to some things, but on time to a lot of other things, check out in the executive functions curriculum of skills, there's a whole set of lessons, and one of them is about attention. What we choose to attend to, and there's a whole other set of lessons about inhibition, what we choose not to pay attention to, what we say to ourselves, okay, I'm not going to do this. And, when you stop and think about it, when you're getting ready to go someplace, we all know how to count backwards and say, okay, I need to get ready, and it's going to take me 15 minutes to get there, and it's going to take me 10 minutes to get ready, and it's going to take me however long to get my child ready, right, which is a variable amount. We all know how to do that, but what happens is that as you're moving along and trying to get ready, then the phone rings, or your child asks you a question about this, or you get an email, right? And we choose, I know I do, to pay attention to that instead of the goal that we have to be on time. And there's actually a set of lessons about how to inhibit your response and think through and say, right now I'm about to make a choice, and if I answer that phone, I'm going to be late. Is that the choice I want to make? We can do these lessons for ourselves, and we can also teach our children these lessons so that they're on time for things and that they pay attention. Let's face it, there are some phone calls that if they came, it'd be worth it to be late for. There are others that it's not. And making the choice in the moment and thinking through, do I want to be late for this phone call, or do I want to return this phone call to somebody later on? Is a powerful, powerful thing. That's in the executive functions curriculum of skills. So there, we kind of have the executive functions lesson as well. And I want to briefly touch on, if I can find it, the questions, the question from yesterday, the answers from yesterday. The what are you resentful about? Yeah, that was the one from yesterday. Okay, somebody wrote in and said, teacher, the school not listening to me as a parent who is there with the child 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So sick of being talked down to, mostly when I am doing their job. I could go on, and family. Yeah, we have stuff to be resentful about, right? Another person said, not resentful, but thankful for all those who have helped my grandson grow and learn. That's just absolutely beautiful. Another person who says that they are a therapist and they treat a few clients with autism, and one of their 19-year-old females tells me that she resents that she will live another 70 years. Now that is a tough one. Any thoughts on that? Wow. That takes my breath a little away, that she's resentful that she's going to live. And I would say that it's a lot like the things we were just talking with Angela Persicke, of finding the next reinforcing thing. That when we have things to look forward to, I do watch Glee. We had Mark Serkin from Autism Speaks with us yesterday, and he referenced Glee. And I thought one of the nicer things that I saw on Glee this last year was that they said to the kids, what are you looking forward to? And made them name what they're looking forward to. It's something that we should all be doing on a regular basis. That sometimes it can seem like, okay, this is what it is, and it's nothing else, and it's laundry and paperwork and tantrums and dishes, and what is there to look forward to? We all have to have things to look forward to, and for this 19-year-old, there's a lot to look forward to in the next 70 years, and be putting in some short-term goals and some long-term goals and some ideas for places you want to go. You can make a bucket list at 19. Let's face it, you absolutely can. You got to have goals and things to look forward to, right? Another person who said to the first person about whose job she was doing their jobs, said if we aren't doing their jobs, they would never get done. So I couldn't wait until my daughter graduated. So sick of it. Yeah, it's frustrating sometimes. Another person who says they resent their ex for abandoning their child. There's a whole list of these, and obviously I'm not going to get through all of them. I do think it's important to say what you're resentful about. I know it can seem like a downer, but if you can say it, you get it up and out, and then you can get back to the business of being grateful for what you do have and for doing what is possible. Didn't we start the conversation 3 hours ago with what's possible? And there's so much that's possible. There's so many things that we now know that we can do for and with our kids to help them to reach their fullest potential. And that's really where we all need to get to. But sometimes, when you're mad and you're frustrated and, we're teaching our kids this, why are you frustrated? Tell me why you're frustrated. Get it up and get it out. Great. Now let's talk about what you can do. We need to do that for ourselves and allow ourselves that space too. You're entitled to be frustrated sometimes. I know you've had some hardships and they're real, and there's nothing we can say to take that away, but say it. Say what it is, and then we can get back to the business at hand. Hey, even though this show is going to end, the conversation continues. And there are so many ways that you can participate in the conversation. Emily's going to start to show some of those different ways to you on the screen. You can email us, you can phone us, you can Skype us, you can Facebook us, you can tweet us. What else is there, right? I don't know. All these different ways that we appreciate your comments. We love to know when something is working for you, but you know what else? We love to know when something isn't working for you. If there are things in the show that you go, that just didn't make sense to me, I need you to go over it. I disagree with what you just said, Shannon. You know what? I can take that because I know what I don't know is endless and boundless, right? Be a part of the conversation. Get what you need here. Get the support you need. By the way, you can be watching us in lots of different ways. Even though we're going to be off for the next couple of hours, we're going to continue to play episodes that have been on before. So if you're watching us on autism-live.com, you'll see another show will start. But you can also be watching us on Blip. You can be watching us on YouTube. You can be watching us on iTunes. Download us for free in all those places. And we're on Ustream. So all of those different ways. The information is free. Take what is useful to you. Leave what is not useful to you, but be a part of the conversation. Tell us what you could use because we're here to help you. I want you to know we're in this with you. I know what it's like in a lot of ways. It's different for everybody, but I know what it's like. We'll be back tomorrow at 9 a.m. and at 11 o'clock. We're going to have Dr. Jonathan Tarbox in the studio talking with us. It's a favorite thing. Make sure you're here with us for that. Until then, please give your kiddos a big hug from me. Bye-bye for now.